If they had told me this podcast was going to be 15 years long, would it have been easier to endure?
That's funny.
Thank you. This episode is going to be 15 years long. I'm calling it right now. Yes, we have to do the kind of experiential.
No.
People love it when we do.
No.
And remember in the Prestige episode?
We can check in with this guest.
When my twin subbed in for a second.
Oh, yeah. I definitely
that.
remember that.
Really well executed.
7
David
years
would let
ago.
me bring a hammer, which is so disappointing.
We're trying all these things here. We're trying to get in Inception. We did podcast in a podcast. 127 hours. We were 127 hours long, and that worked out really well. And so I'm saying, let's just do
As long as we can get dumplings.
yes.
Oh, yeah, right. We will have dumplings delivered every day. That would be nice.
Yeah.
No, we can check in 15 years later, though, like Richard Linklater style. So what's that? Let me do the math. 2038.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
So
We good. So we'll meet back here.
yeah,
2038.
or like the Wet Hot American Summer. Jam.
Right,
Like,
right.
you know, I'm busy that morning, but
Okay.
afternoon I could do.
So rather than do a 15-year-long podcast, we do a podcast, and then 15 years later, we come back to it and go, pretty good. Pretty good app. What are you doing, David's his new favorite bit of prop comedy.
Playing with the big tape measure.
He likes the big tape measure.
Yeah.
This is set up in a later episode.
Okay. All right.
That's a tease.
This is a terrible beginning to
horrendous.
a big episode about a big movie from our big director.
15-year-long podcast. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce, baby. It's a mini-series on the films of Park Chan-wook, and it's called I'm a Podcast, But That's Okay.
That's right. That's right, jerks.
It's not called Podboy.
You keep calling them jerks. We put the poll up on Twitter.
Yeah, and we
Right.
said, fuck you, your
And
opinions
they
suck.
voted
asked
against this, and
we asked
decided
for them to choose.
Yes.
we decided against their choice.
Yeah, we're teaching them a lesson.
They chose
Okay.
sympathy for Mr. Podcast, and we
Yeah.
decided that was boring.
And we had no sympathy for them. Fuck off.
right.
All right.
Yep.
Today we're talking about Oldboy, his most famous film.
Is that still true? Probably.
I think
right?
it
so,
has
too.
to be.
Yeah.
So the Handmaiden probably the only challenger, I would say.
I don't think Handmaiden comes anywhere close to this in terms of legacy.
I agree.
Yeah, that's my favorite of his films. I just think that he will kind of always be the old boy guy.
And this
that
was
will be his
a
epitaph.
film that changed things.
Yes, that's the
It's
thing.
hard to make one of those.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
And it's also like so much of its era. I feel like it
It
was a kind
really
of era defining.
Right.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
This is sort of like The Graduate for like modern South Korean cinema. You know, where you're like, well, that's like an inflection point.
I think it's just also
And in terms of it
it's
crossing
just a big
over-
movie for extreme cinema.
Yes.
In general.
Yes.
Like or Western audiences being exposed to extreme cinema.
That's the thing. I think this movie crossed over more than most films of the 2000s did into the United States.
Most films of the you mean like
Most
like
foreign
like
films,
foreign films.
foreign language
Sure.
films.
Yeah.
Not immediately, but I just think
Yeah,
this movie
more-
just kept fucking growing.
And
Right.
it also like introduced people, I think, it was people's introduction, a lot of people to South Korean cinema
Yeah,
as an idea and a
100%.
What's
scene.
going on here?
And like,
100%.
and especially like then it kind of the whole scene got associated with
Right.
being like gnarly,
Yes.
extreme stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is all true. It's like did it make a lot of money in America? Like in theaters? Not
Did
at all.
particularly
No.
well, but I
But,
feel like it was huge on DVD.
Yes.
Exactly. It just had this kind of like long reputation, or like college kids
Yes,
or whatever. You know, all
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, if you were in the know, if you were like a
Right.
suburban, a suburban teen who became a college kid, like you would show off your sophistication with like Old Boy.
Also, so much of the fact that this movie is so fucked up.
It is though.
No, it is. I'm not saying it. I'm
no,
not.
no.
I'm not
but you're
mockingly.
right. No, but we were kind of like that in 2005. I feel like,
This
and
is my
now I'm
point.
watching it. And I'm like, good lord, this is so fucked up.
I
Like,
think this movie's legacy for a while
Like,
was like
Jesus.
someone has the DVD in their dorm room and they're like, have you fucking seen this? Like people
yeah.
want to show it to friends to see their reaction to it in a way that was more of a like VHS era horror thing, I think. Where it's like, oh, have you never seen Cannibal Holocaust?
Yeah.
I gotta show you this fucked up thing.
Right. And then you could kind of progress from there if like
Right.
Old Boy was like the entry level, and then you could get into like Flowers of Flesh and Blood and like all
Yes.
of kind of like the stuff that was like even more esoteric.
Right.
The Tartan Extreme era.
Thank you. That's the big.
I tried So hard.
Yeah.
So hard
To get the
a
Tartan
job
Extreme
at
stuff.
Tartan.
To get a job doing
When
what?
I was
Oh,
right out of
wow.
college. Yes. It was like my number one, like, I want to work at Tartan.
Doing
like,
what?
Like marketing or like whatever.
Anything.
You know,
You were
any
like, just take me in.
entry level
Yeah.
job. I
Yeah.
had an interview there. And I think, they appreciated my enthusiasm, and eventually we're just sort of like, this kid has no work experience. Like, really? Like,
Can we just say that Extreme was a masterstroke? For those who don't know,
oh,
Tartan
yeah.
distribution, home media company, but they started putting out certain titles under the Tartan Extreme label. And I feel like Oldboy having that Tartan Extreme in big letters on top made people go, what? So what else? Right?
Yeah.
And then it was sort of like anything else with the Tartan Extreme on top was like, well, maybe it's like Oldboy. And I do think that branding alone being tied to this movie exposed a lot of people to a lot of films they wouldn't have watched otherwise.
100%. And very, very cool. And obviously they did Battle Royale as well, which I feel like is the other early 2000s
Yeah.
piece
Oh,
of
But it's
Asian
earlier
cinema.
than this.
It's like 2001 maybe?
I think
or
so. 2000, 2001.
I think
And
this-
Audition was
Right.
I think they
99?
might
Audition.
Yeah.
Audition. All right.
Or
Battle
2000.
Royale is 2000. I think
Okay.
Audition is 2001. But let me look it up. No, 99. Sorry.
Thank you.
Um,
I saw Audition
I
recently.
mean, obviously, I say these are the numbers on them, but like they came to the West a little later
Right.
usually.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they would
But
take-
I think Oldboy is benefiting from a couple years of tape trading of Battle Royale
It
and
is,
Audition.
but
and
I
Ichi
do
the
also
Killer,
think
you
it's
know,
like, so you guys know about Japanese cinema?
Yes.
Sure. You know about Hong Kong kung fu movies?
Yeah.
Sure. But like, do you know about Korean movies? What do they do in Korea? Like, what?
whole thing
Right.
fucking opens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there was that thing of like, yes, coming from different countries, but those couple of movies we just listed circulating with like intense film bros, right?
Right. And then also because of like Tartan Extreme, I think a lot of them ended up at your like, Hollywood Video.
Yes.
And like those were standards in the international
Right.
section. And so if you were like looking for something that felt really provocative, right? Really inflammatory, you could go find them at like most like chain places, you
Yeah.
know, they were accessible.
Yes. Sometimes in slightly cut down versions.
Sure.
I do feel like you look at home video releases and you're like, oh, there was like a blockbuster version of Oldboy. Like that era still where certain chains would demand versions just for them.
But they were also like, they just cared so much less about international stuff, which
Yeah.
was like the kind of secret of all of those chains, right?
Yeah.
Like if it was not rated in the first place, then they're like,
Not really paying attention. Yeah.
yeah.
Oldboy.
Our guest today, of course, from Vulture, from the Prestige episode where the world's greatest bit happened.
And Eat, Drink, Man, Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that. I don't think we did any bits in that though.
That was pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
episode.
really
That's a
didn't.
great movie.
It is.
Wait,
Love
is
that
there another
movie.
one we're forgetting? Because we did realize, it's been a stupid amount of time since we've had Allison on. Allison Willmore is
No,
our
those
guest.
are Allison's
That's-
2 episodes. Well,
That embarrassing.
you're back.
Embarrassing.
Hi, Allie.
Here I am
Yes.
from outer
Um,
space.
From outer space.
Nice to see you. We see each other all the time.
All the time.
But I don't.
Okay,
That's
okay.
not a bad thing. I love to see
I
Allison.
see Allison sometimes too.
Sure.
That's true.
We did
Yeah.
the film spotting show
That's
together.
true. See, that's it. Our last
didn't do
our
that.
last hang was like backstage somewhere.
Yes.
So
At the
it
Bell
felt-
House or
yeah.
something?
There's no hang like a backstage.
Nothing
hang.
like that green room at the Bell House.
Yeah.
They always have those tortilla chips.
Yeah,
Yes.
got some
Very
hummus.
nice.
It was
Oh,
nice.
Right.
It was
There's
real
there's
nice.
the vegetable and hummus
Right,
platter
platter.
where the plastic lid almost never gets taken off to the point where almost every time I go there, I'm like, is this the same one?
If I open this, is it plastic?
Yeah.
Actually?
Yes.
How long can they stretch that one out before they're like, no, we got to throw this one away?
No offense to the lovely Bell House, of course.
Oh, we
Thank
love
you for
them.
putting
No.
out the hummus.
We love that. And of course, I'm sure it's fresh. I'll just
As
never.
a daisy.
Fresh as a daisy.
Here we are today
Yeah.
to discuss Oldboy.
Mhm.
Certainly, yeah, one of the big boys in this filmography,
I think it's the big boy.
and a seminal film.
And
I
it's,
think
it's
also.
certainly, let's also just say, it is the old boy of this filmography.
Sure, you
Yeah,
mean it's
I'm not
old?
sure. Yeah, what
You're
does
saying
that-
it's
what are you
20
saying
years
here?
old.
It's
Yeah.
certainly the big boy of this filmography. It also is undeniably the old boy of his filmography. It's the only movie he made called Old Boy.
That's true. That is accurate.
You can't push back on that, David. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I don't remember. I don't know.
It's falling apart
I have
already.
no idea.
Right before we started recording, Allison, you asked if any of us knew what the definition of old boy is.
Yeah, like the kind of terminology old boy is not something that comes up for me very often.
Yes, I have to assume because the film is so for one, it's based on a manga, a Japanese manga, correct? Called Oldboy.
Fairly loosely adapted.
Yes, we'll
Yes.
talk about
Yep.
that, but the same title.
Yep.
And then the Korean title is also Oldboy. Like it's in Korean, obviously, but it's
Sure.
not like this movie's called Oldboy in America and it's called like The Man Who Had a Hammer in
Yes.
Korea or whatever. Which sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, the
Yeah.
title just means something completely different.
Yes.
The Man Who Fucked His Daughter. Wait, what? They give away the title in the.
I thought that was a spoiler,
Yeah,
but no.
Yeah,
so
let's offer
weird.
some spoilers for a 20-plus-year-old movie. This is very much a family film.
Oh.
Old
It is.
Boy,
It's for the whole family.
Old Boy and the Old Boy Network is
Family
sort of the
likes fucking each other.
terminology.
Go on. Yeah.
It refers to especially if you went to like Eton or whatever, you went to like a very fancy British school,
Okay.
and then you graduate, you're called an old boy.
Okay.
I guess just meaning like you were once a boy, and now when you were at that school, you were a boy, and now you are an old boy.
Ben pointed out that a lot of British sort of greetings are like, "Hey there, old chum."
Hello,
Old
boy.
Watch out, old chap.
sports.
Yeah.
But I don't know. In England, you just call it the Old Boy Network, like disdainfully, like you're referring
I've
to.
never heard of that podcast.
This
network.
sort of yeah, they got some good ones. They got David Cameron and Boris Johnson,
Yeah.
all those guys. No, they disdainfully refer to like the ruling class. All these guys who went to
I've seen
these
that
like
old boy
schools.
network I have heard of,
Right.
but the idea of being like you're an
I-
old boy.
I think I would technically be referred to as an old boy from
You
us.
are
I
an
think
old
you all.
boy.
They don't use the word alum or whatever.
It's so funny to me that I never for a second ever thought, what does that title mean? I just sort of was like, well, it's a movie about Old Boy. Like, I know
He
his
is an old
character's
boy.
name is not Old Boy, and I know they never call him that, but I was just like, well, yeah, I don't know. Like Spider-Man, he's Old Boy.
It was one of those things where back in the day, yes, we had the internet in 2003. I don't know what your guys' experience were with this, but we had the internet.
We did, yeah.
Can't remember that far back. Sorry.
And like there was a Cannes Film Festival.
Uh-huh.
Now this film had actually, I think, already come out
Correct.
in Korea,
Yes.
but then it went to
My
Cannes.
awareness of this movie was entirely, for better or worse, based on Ain't It Cool pumping this up for like a year.
Oh, it was definitely an
interesting.
Ain't It Cool.
It was a
I didn't realize that.
Ain't It Cool.
I
Hey,
remember
you
that.
know what?
Yes.
Good for them. Like or whatever. Like that was what Ain't It Cool did, I guess.
Yeah.
They created those culty,
But it was one where they
avenues.
just sort of like everyone put their chips down. We're like, we're telling you this is a major work. So by the time
Obviously he'd already made, Sympathy for Mr.
Yeah.
So he was getting
the
some
time
credit. JSA.
the time it plays at Con, I was like, I need to fucking see this thing now. Everyone is talking about.
I remember just all the online scuttlebutt at Cannes
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Tarantino wants to give this. Tarantino is the jury
Yes.
president. Wants to give it to Old Boy.
Yes.
Like it's the perfect Tarantino movie.
Yes.
It's an Asian film, like that's like sort of from a pocket of culture that Americans don't know as much about, and it's
Sure.
super extreme and fucked up and
A
crazy.
transgressive postmodern noir.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it went to Fahrenheit 9/11. Maybe the worst Cannes decision ever. Like maybe the absolute worst decision ever made by a Cannes jury.
Quite possibly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That movie is awful.
Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously is total vapor. Like
Yes.
it's like we're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah,
watch.
we're
that
not
movie
talking about it now.
No.
Yeah.
It had no impact on anything.
No.
I know it made like $100 million. Like it was a big deal.
Well, I'm sorry. You say it had no impact on anyone. A lot of shoulders got bruised. People fucking patting themselves on the back,
right.
sitting there buying a ticket. Yes, I
Oh,
do
God.
agree.
Like you look at the lineup that year, and it's
Mhm.
kind of a janky lineup.
Sure.
But like 2046 was in competition.
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah.
I know. I think it was in a slightly unfinished version. Maybe there was a whole thing with 2046. But anyway, Lucretia Martel's The Holy Girl. That's a great movie.
That is a
Great
movie I think
movie.
is a masterpiece.
Nobody Knows, the Correia movie. That movie's
Phenomenal
great.
film.
movie. Yeah.
Old Boy, Tropical Malady, which I think got maybe the jury prize. Like, that was the beginning of him getting some attention.
Irma P. Hall got a special award that year. Was Lady Killers in competition?
It was.
That's wild.
Lady Killers is in competition, and she got a special award.
It was sort of the Samuel Jackson, we're giving a
the
supporting
prize of the
performance.
jury.
Right.
because they gave actor to the lead of Nobody Knows, and they gave actress to Maggie Chung for Clean, which is like
Huh.
not the
Oh,
best
wow.
SAS movie, but like pretty good, and she's amazing in it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
that's
so
her
it's like
last
not
film role?
Maggie Chung.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time for her.
Has she never ever?
It's been
It's like
time.
it's like only cameos after that. Yeah. A couple
Yeah.
Weird.
So good win.
So like
Yeah.
not and like, he fucking gave it to fucking Michael Moore.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was when I was like hearing about Oldboy. It was like, this is the movie that's been anointed by Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that's a little patronizing and ridiculous. But 17-year-old David, that was my awareness.
But that, for me, it was like that was being added on to a year of online drumming for this thing, where then I was just, I mean, I think I saw this like opening weekend, if not opening day, when it played at the Angelica. Because by the time it came out, I was just like, well, this is like the Phantom Menace of international cinema. I've been reading like 18 months of breathless hype on this thing.
What about you, Allison? What's your experience with Oldboy?
I cannot remember the first time I saw it. Like, I cannot remember the context. This feels also, it feels like a movie that would have been in the New York Asian Film Festival. You know,
Seems
like it's
very
absolutely
plausible.
like that. Like that festival also had an incredible run in like the kind of mid-aughts where they were just showcasing like all like so many movies from like what we've talked about, the kind of Tartan Extreme era. And they were just like an amazing way that those movies got surfaced here. But I cannot remember when I first saw it. I just remember being so intrigued by it because of how edgy it was supposed to be in terms of content, you know, and I just like, I'm an easy mark for that. If something is supposed to be just like truly incendiary, I'm like, sign me up. I'm going to watch it. You know, I have an incredibly high tolerance for all of that, but I'm also just very easily intrigued by it.
Yeah, and this movie has I don't know. It's not like it's not like it is alone in this regard, right? But it has a combination of like, there are scenes in it in which things happen on camera that are so extreme you won't believe it. And also, narratively, where this movie goes is so extreme you won't believe it.
Right.
Like, you're going to be equally disturbed by ideas and images. Whereas I feel like often in that sort of extreme cinema realm, it's like maybe more one than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, you know, this has this, the Oldboy has this incredibly potent combination of gorgeous filmmaking and then someone's tooth getting removed in close up with the back end of a hammer.
Yes.
And that is something that, I don't know, there's something, I don't want to say that's my sweet spot because that's so sociopathic, but I do feel like I love
Thumbs up.
a gorgeously made movie that is also just like really out there in terms of where it's willing to go. But yeah, like the thing for me rewatching this on a sketchy pirated streaming site because
Possible
it's
to
not,
stream right now?
not
Really?
available.
Yes. You know, we have physical versions that we bought,
I
but
thought I had one as well, but I couldn't find it.
Did you watch it on f'dupmovies.com?
It was something. It was one of those ones where it's like 1234movies.net co.
Rotten.com.
Yeah.
Kosovo.
You know, where you're like, oh, what's this doing to my computer?
But that having been said, David, we both watched on physical copies. You, I believe, bought an out-of-print American set.
I did. I bought an out-of-print American steelbook set of the Vengeance trilogy.
And I bought the Arrow set of the Vengeance trilogy, which is pretty new, but obviously was not commercially released in the United States.
Right.
I don't think there's any North American physical release of this movie currently in print.
There's one coming soon, though.
Well, right. They are re-releasing it this August.
Yes.
And
Which is
so
probably
that'll
why
be
it's
all
not streaming
remastered.
right now. They're
And
trying to...
Right. So it'll probably
Get a
have
whole
a physical
thing.
release after that or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is annoyingly and confusingly considering its reputation. I forgot to mention, hard to stream, I forgot to mention one other film, of course, that was at the 2004 Cannes Film Festival, Shrek 2.
Of course.
We all remember.
Of course.
Shrek 1 was at Cannes. Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Sure, well, Shrek was a big deal. Shrek 2
Was it also in competition?
in competition.
Wow.
Amazing.
Really
what a
root for
time.
3. Do you think Katzenberg was just like, it's a done fucking deal?
3's gonna win.
The third's getting in. It's winning. Finally, we're over. It's our
We've
return to
laid the
king
runway.
moment.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Pomdora loves giving out that trophy to the third film in a trilogy. Just waiting, guys.
You weren't at Cannes. Were you at Cannes? No, you weren't at Cannes.
No, I wish
so
I was.
Ask
for
2
Cannes
more
Cross.
times.
Yeah.
Were you at Cannes?
No.
Shrek the Third wasn't even out of competition.
Yeah.
Sad.
Wow,
Shrek
a
the-
shocking rejection.
Shrek the Third was
Seriously.
banned from France. They revoked its passport.
Oldboy. Yes.
Oldboy.
I think I saw this in theaters when it finally did make it over to me because of all the hype. And I remember, I think at the time I was like, this movie is crazy. That's how I feel about this movie. When I
Yes.
was a teen I was like a late teen. I was like, well, this movie is crazy and I can take it. And that's like a sign of what a mature film
You can
goer
handle
I am.
it.
I smoked a blunt and then watched this movie 100%
Right.
in high school and
Right,
had my
yeah.
fucking mind blown.
Now, you did that yesterday.
No, if I did that yesterday, I wouldn't be here right now.
Sure.
I can't do that anymore.
And I watched it, and I'd never seen it again. I like rewatched it at some point, and then this is my third viewing of Oldboy, I think.
So I've talked about this in other episodes leading up to this. I have always struggled with this movie.
You didn't really like it on
I went
release.
into it with all this hype and did not like it.
Why didn't you like it?
Well, let me unpack it because I rewatched it last night for the first time in 20 years, basically.
Okay.
And I still really struggle with this movie.
Yeah.
And it's not a thing where I'm like morally offended by it in any way. It's not like I have objections on that level. And I think like my tolerance is pretty fucking high for things that happen in movies. Like I you know, I'm the guy who fucking stumped for star 80. I'm like, there are a lot of movies that I really love that I think are truly like staring into the heart of darkness.
Sure.
Or depicting like incredibly uncomfortable things, whether thematically or visually or whatever it is. And this is just one of the few movies, and perhaps it does have to do with the fact that it is just empirically well made. So everything it's doing perhaps hits a little deeper, but I just like really find this movie unpleasant. And I don't
unpleasant.
say it pejoratively, but I also can't say I ever enjoy watching it.
I think that's
fine.
very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
have
love
slightly.
all of his other movies other than the first two. I'm like so on board with Park in general, and this one is like always a roadblock.
It's very unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I also my feelings about him in general, I think kind of I like him sometimes a lot and I don't other times.
Mhm.
But this movie I think is like it's thrillingly made, you know, like I
Right.
think there
Yeah.
are like just like heart like pulse pounding moments in it, like genuinely like rousing messed up moments. And I do think it gets at something about like throw your life away rage and resentment, and about it's ultimately about these like two incredibly sad dudes
Yes.
like destroying themselves. And I also think that like a lot of the plot is just so dumb. Like it's just so dumb.
it is a silly movie.
That's why I like it, because it's very, very silly.
I also don't say this
somewhat
pejoratively,
whimsical. Yeah,
but it is
yeah.
this weird balance that I
Sort
just
of fairy tale.
I get very icked out watching it, and not just by the obvious icky things. The whole thing just kind of makes my skin crawl.
It has a very grotty, to use a British expression, aesthetic generally.
Yes, it is it's one of the great wallpaper movies.
Oh,
Just
God, some nasty wallpaper.
just tons of wallpaper. Everyone in this movie is like, you know what I need in my apartment and or secret private prison
Mold.
is just mold, but also incredibly busy wallpaper.
Yes. I watched the Arrow Vengeance trilogy set has this 2-hour long documentary called, I believe, Old Days.
Okay.
That's like a 15 plus years later reminiscing on the movie from all the key creative contributors.
About Oldboy specifically.
Yes. No, just about Oldboy.
Yeah.
The DP on this film, remind me his name.
Isn't it Chung Hoon? I believe
believe that's
Chung Hoon
correct.
Chun, to use the, I believe that's his usual. Yes.
He said he very strategically wanted to make sure that every single shot in this movie had green in it, and a good amount of green, and I feel like the most putrid shade of green.
Very like mossy kind of
Yes.
dank green. Yes.
And he said it was because green was historically the color that reproduced least easily on film. And people would, especially in this era, be like, just stay away from green if you can.
Right. You don't want too much green.
And it's
Sure.
like he went towards the thing that was going to produce an unpleasant result on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a pretty grimy movie. It's also interesting, in comparison to Decision to Leave, which also has a lot of epic wallpaper, but it's like gorgeous, dreamy, like
Very
It's just
symbolic,
clean and modern.
Handmade in two, obviously, has beautiful,
Yes.
painted.
yes, ominous wallpaper type things.
No, but you're right. Decision to Leave in general is very like antiseptic.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, intentionally.
Right.
Whereas
Handmaiden's very sensual.
this movie is sweaty and nasty.
Yes.
And this man has been in a hotel for 15 years, and you really feel it.
It's also like he starts out awful. The movie starts and you're like, I gotta watch this guy for like 2 hours, and they're like, no, don't worry, he's gonna get a lot worse.
He'll get worse, but
His
kind of
soul's gonna
better.
die.
Right. Yeah, he's gonna turn into a weird
He'll
ghost.
sober up a bit.
Yes. All right, Oldboy. Let me give you some context,
Please.
actually. All right, so I assume no one has read the manga Oldboy. It's very, very different. Have you read
And
it?
it's a long series, right?
I read
So 3 years.
one of those
80
like
issues.
Sparks Notes style
Uh-huh.
summaries of it, just to confirm that a certain major plot point seems to be absent.
It's not in it at all.
Yes.
I believe the whole concept is completely different of like why he did this to him.
The thing I heard Park say in the documentary was, I was much more interested in not why someone imprisoned him for 15 years, but why someone would let him out.
Right.
Right.
Like
And-
why? Because imprisoning someone for 15 years is punishment. Sure,
Right.
that would be a punishment that I would not want.
But why would you release him, and what are you trying to accomplish,
What's
and what
the
are you trying to prove?
final chapter of this?
Right. And then he obviously, his whole thing, he loves about how vengeance and violence, all these things curdle and destroy us, these urges and all of that. And I think he just really went like, incest is pretty much the most shameful thing in society. Just go for the hottest
Understandably.
button.
Yes.
That could be the root of everything.
Yeah, we'll talk about right. Okay, the impression I get from the original is it's more just like, I don't know. They had this interaction in school that he was embarrassed by,
Right.
that the villain was embarrassed by, and so he, even though the villain became successful and powerful, he wanted to humiliate this man and
It's
turn
an
him
Iron
into
Man
a bad
3.
person, and like
An
that's
Iron
kind of
Man
it.
So like the
3,
discovery at
kind
the
of a-
end is kind of anticlimactic. He
Yeah.
was like been searching this whole time for like, what did I do to this person to make them
It's
hate
like
me so
you were
much?
mean
And it's
to me
like,
about
yeah,
like
you
a song I sang.
you
in
embarrass
school.
me when I felt
Right.
emotional or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Give me
I
huge Iron Man 3
appreciate
vibes.
I guess so. Sure. Guy Pearce is you're remembering.
Yeah, he says, I'll meet you up at the hotel room. He
Right,
doesn't
right.
show up, and Guy Pearce is like, I'll spend the next 20
Yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah.
trying
I'll
to
see you
destroy
later,
you.
buddy.
Yeah, glowing up, fucking
Um,
destroying your life.
I like that though. I like a long, like all-consuming campaign of
Yeah,
spite.
yeah.
Well, because like, yes, if someone did that to me and I finally met them, they probably would be like, don't you understand? And I would be like, I definitely don't. Like,
Yeah.
this is a one-sided adversarial thing. Like, there's no way I feel the way you do about me, about you. So there's, this thing exists.
Mhm.
And a movie producer, Lim Sung-young, finds the manga, likes the idea, and also apparently just sort of like is flickering through it and thinks the character looks like Choi Min-Sik, this actor, the
Okay.
lead actor. Again, I apologize for, my pronunciation. I'm not sure. Choi Min-Sik is
I
I
don't
know.
speak Korean, so
I know.
I cannot really help you out. But
I'm
wish I
not
could.
I'm looking for help, but I'm not expecting it. So for whatever reason, that's the trigger thing. It's just kind of like, I don't know, this guy kind of looks like, this could be something. So he
Sure.
takes it to Park Chan-wook, who is intrigued as this, he likes it as this sort of like mythological old fairy tale,
Mhm.
Pandora's box, but modern thing. He likes that it's kind of a fantasy. Which it is. It
Mhm.
really is kind of like a fairy tale. It feels like it's like an
a
Arthur
horrible-
story.
Sure.
Right. Like, oh, you know what happened to Sir Blah? Well, he
Right.
got locked in a castle for 15 years
Oh,
because
not-
he
Right,
pissed this
right,
guy
yeah.
off.
Not an Arthur the
But,
Aardvark
that's the
story.
whole thing with King Arthur, where they're like, and let me
Sure.
tell you about this knight. And what's up with that? Like the Green Knight is one of those.
Yeah.
So it's not about an old like drunk guy. Arthur story.
It says a lot that Ben went to Dudley Moore Arthur and I went to Eric
King
Brown
Arthur.
Arthur.
He's called Odesu, right? That's the
Uh-huh.
the character's name, which is a reference to Oedipus.
Oh, sure.
Sort of again thinking of this as like, tragic Greek myth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And apparently because they're casting Choi Min-Sik, who I guess is just a very big actor at the time. I think he had his breakthrough in the 90s and just
Mhm.
become a very big star. They're like, he kind of needs to be quote unquote heroic in the movie, even though he is going to be a mess.
Interesting.
He'll be like fighting.
Okay.
He'll,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He is kind of like
He's
iconic.
cool. Yeah.
His
Sure.
hair is cool.
You need to make him
Yeah.
into a little bit more of an action star, even if it's a weird
Right.
version of an action star.
Yeah.
And they had to talk him into the hairstyle.
It's an iconic hairstyle.
Yeah,
Which
yes.
is totally the right choice.
Yeah.
But I can assume why they were like, look, you'll look like Albert Einstein. Like, it's great. That he was like, what are you doing?
They show a bunch of the hair and makeup tests, and they also in this documentary, and he talks about it present day, and he talks about it as if it is still an act of trauma as he's recounting the moment.
Apparently
where they did the test
they
on
basically
him?
like gave him a big perm, I think. Like they had to
Right.
like wrap his hair in foil for like 3 days to make
Correct.
him look like he'd like been in the microwave.
Right, but
Yeah,
it's also like
hair does not do that normally.
This looks
It's
like
kind
a
of-
rat's nest. Like it's all matted.
Right, but it looks like a drawing also. Like it really
does.
does look like something that would be on the page where someone is just like a puffball.
There's that animation principle of like you should design your characters so that they all work in silhouette. Blacked out, you can always tell just from the shape of their body without the details.
Absolutely.
Where like every Simpsons character works purely in silhouette.
A lot of Disney movies function that way. Like they all have a certain shape. That is not
no one else looks like this guy.
Yes.
And the hair helps a lot, but even just the fit of his suit and his posture and everything.
Right. He's like, his joints feel like they work weirdly somehow.
Yes.
There's something has gone on. And the smile, obviously. The smile, which is just, you would not be surprised if the first time he did it, just like blood started seeping in between like from his gums.
We'll talk about the final shot of the movie, but very crucial how he expresses himself facially.
This is an astounding performance.
It really is. He's amazing. I've only seen him in a few movies. Obviously, he popped up in what with Lucy? Like he did eventually do a couple English language movies, but I feel like he is, largely he's in Sympathy for Lady Vengeance.
One I'm forgetting. No, but wasn't there one other sort of Hollywood foray?
Not that I can see.
I'm gonna,
but click around. He's done a lot of theater. And like when you look at his theater career in Korea, it's like Equus, Our Town,
yes,
The Pillow Man, like like he does a lot of like Western plays that like get which. So I think he's like a very venerated sort of like
serious actor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just I was just thinking of I Saw the Devil, which is obviously not a Hollywood film, but was a huge crossover years
and
later.
also was like a huge hit, right? Like
That's
that was like a #1 box office hit.
Humongous hit.
Such a messed up movie.
Yes.
I've never seen it. I know it to be nasty.
But that was talk about a movie that's like benefiting from.
That's the Tale of Two Sisters guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's got that sort of like, well, it's like the Oldboy guy in another movie that's fucked up.
Right.
And that like worked. People fucking bought the DVD.
Yeah.
Apparently then, so there's a press conference announcing this film, which I think is commonplace in the Korean industry. And they're like, so you're doing another movie about vengeance? You just did a movie about vengeance. And Park impulsively is like, maybe I'll do a third movie about vengeance. And hence we have a vengeance trilogy.
Cool.
But I don't think he was like in his studio being like, I must explore vengeance.
I'm imagining him do a Kevin Feige press conference announcing the phases of the Vengeance trilogy in advance.
And have we ever wondered about Lady Vengeance? So okay. Here's some quotes from him. The reason I want to show shocking things is that they always pose an ethical question. When we're confronted with extreme situations, we forget about moral issues. We simply act and then must accept the consequences. I want to show the moral issues involved in everyday life by heightening them. Now, Alison, you've interviewed him.
I have.
And it's just like from all these dossiers we're getting, like he really talks in these like blocks of text that are quite academic, or how I don't know how to describe it, but like he's not really like a punchy talker. Like he's very, very, very thoughtful and long-winded.
So I was supposed to interview him for like a New York Magazine rubric that is In Conversation, right? Which is a back and forth kind of like Q&A style, but like longer piece. And like two things that really don't make for a good In Conversation are one, going through a translator.
What is his, does he speak English at all?
He could clearly like pick up some of it, but like he insisted he uses a translator. And in general, I shouldn't have done this interview. Like someone who is an actual Korean speaker should have done this interview. Going through a translator is always going to lead to like a weird rhythm and also just like losing context.
Yeah, I was going to say also, I mean, him speaking in large blocks, it's like the few times I've had to do something through a translator, you are like, I'm not going to do one sentence back and forth.
Right. You're going to do a big question.
And a big answer.
Automatically. Yeah. Right. But I do also think that he just has this kind of like sturdy intellectual reputation. Right.
Well, like, so the first time I interviewed him like twice or three times, I can't remember. But like the first time it was in person and I asked him what I thought was like a softball like question to get us.
How are you doing today?
It was something like that, and then he answered for like 10 minutes. Like he talked, and then the translator translated, and then he talked some more, and the translator translated, and then he talked some more, and the translator translated, and I was like, oh no.
Wow.
But yes, he is very, very intellectual about how he talks about his films, and like very considered, but like very, very serious. Which is funny, I think sometimes when you look, like his movies are like goofier sometimes.
They're
This
fine.
movie is pretty goofy.
Yeah.
I think of him as consistently goofy.
Yes.
Like pretty much there's pretty much humor in all of his
Yes.
movies. Strange humor or just like fanciful twists of sort of
I think that is
story and
one
all
of the things that put him on the map, and then with this movie made him sort of like, oh, this is a director. I know what I'm getting when I'm going to see a Park Chan-wook film. His name means something. Is this very bizarre mix of tones he has on top
Yes.
of the sort of thematic concerns and the aesthetic proclivities and the intensity and all that sort of shit. It is like, how can this guy balance this sort of incredibly goofy comedy with serious action sequences, with like
Also, like,
overcranked
wrenching,
drama,
emotional,
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Allison, I read your most recent interview. My brain is not working today. The one you did when Decisional Leave was coming
Yeah,
out.
that was the one where I spoke to him 3 times for that
Yeah.
altogether. And
And I was like, I wanna see what he say. Allison's coming on the show. I should read this interview. And I was like, why is all of this familiar? And I realized basically every single answer he gave, JJ used in the dossier for our first episode. So if you want to invoice JJ, you basically
fucking
wrote that
should.
dossier for him.
I mean,
Yes.
that's nice to hear because I was worried. It was hard to get him to talk about things that I feel, he's, especially when you're going through someone's like past
Right.
work, like they just have a bunch of stories that they've already told and they
Sure.
just kind of like fall into that as much, like there's, but I think there are some things, especially with regard to when he said like after this movie, he felt bad about how Mito, the like female character, was left like not having all the information about say her relationship and
no
everything
one
that
clue
just
her in?
happened.
It's like a little laminated card
I-
being like, by
yeah.
the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
He fucked your dad.
No,
Sorry.
but that he made
Yeah.
several films after this that were all attempts at correcting.
exactly.
Yes, the
Like,
lack of agency, the lack.
yes.
Right. I mean, it's not a surprise he goes straight from this into Lady Vengeance
Yeah.
and Handmaiden and Decisional Leave. He was saying in your interview, like those were both still him trying to address what he felt were shortcomings in Oldboy.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
works with female screenwriters now. Like he makes a point of that, and I
Yes.
think like his family gets kind of also like gives more feedback. And but yeah, certainly in this movie, it's like very glaring.
He seems very aware of it. I just,
Yes.
especially
Yeah.
the Handmaiden, I feel like he was
Oh,
really
yeah.
like, I have like feel like I'm much more of a feminist than I was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about it when that movie comes around.
Look, it's one of the things that icks me out about this movie, and I'm not saying this in like a morality police, kind of way, but it is just like everything in this movie is awful, right? Basically, every character is despicable. Everything everyone's living through is horrendous, right? And I'm usually very tuned into everything is terrible, everyone's the worst movies, because that matches my basic viewpoint on the world. But this character in particular, you're just like, I feel so fucking bad for her. She's kind of the only person who in no way has this coming,
Yes.
and she just gets so fucked in so many ways while also not really being given any narrative agency or interiority, where you're like,
Yeah.
this whole movie she's just hypnotized.
Right. And then like, I mean, you get that one glimpse of her like in the past and she's just crying alone on the subway.
Right.
And you're like, man, like even before
Not
you had this encounter
happy.
where you were hypnotized into this thing, your life was filled with misery. Yeah.
Yes,
she's-
it's a bit
she
of a
gets-
bummer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she gets a raw deal. I mean, everyone does. I do think this
Yes.
this movie, I do think is like very much about like all encompassing, specifically masculine rage, and the rest of the world just kind of gets swept up
agree
by
100%.
kind of idiocy in the
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel so bad for her at every moment
Yes.
in this film, to a point where it does just sort of start to like affect my my
you just don't
viewing.
want to watch it.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
It's sort of the way you now, David, like talk about when we watch movies where there are like small children's or small children, babe. Right, exactly. Right, where you're just like, I just can't even process.
I just
this.
don't like to think about it. It's like I can process it, but I just don't want to think about it. Now, sometimes I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
This is my job. I gotta see movies where children are in peril
Yes.
or whatever. But I hate it.
But I usually almost love thinking about horrendous things to the extent where you just say, Griffin, stop thinking about
maybe
that.
you don't though. Maybe you're realizing this about yourself.
I don't know. That was the thing, was watching this when it came out. knowing its legacy was so great, being excited to rewatch it for this, I was like, am I gonna just watch this and be like, oh, I was like 14 when I saw this, whatever.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
But it was interesting. In a way, I do have to absolutely commend this movie for. It still affected me as viscerally.
Yeah, I mean, rewatching this, and I hadn't seen it for years.
Yeah.
That it is, I think, that relationship and the that is the stuff in the movie that is more upsetting than any of the violence.
Oh,
you know,
knowing the twist going in on a review, every
Also tough.
scene just becomes worse. Ding dong.
Who's at the door? Click. Hello.
Hi,
what's up? Who's
Just
your
get
name?
on with it. Dr. Jeffrey Rush. You know my deal.
Oh, it's you.
I don't have time for this. David, I don't have time for this. I'm a doctor.
What's the game where no one wins?
The winning game. I don't want to talk about this. Get through the ad copy.
When it comes to hiring, don't wait for great talent to find you. Find them first with
David,
Indeed.
why are you slowing down? I'm Dr. Jeffrey
Well, we
Rush.
do have to take 60 seconds on these things.
Okay, but give it a little life.
All right. How many Oscars do you have again?
I'm a doctor. I'm not Jeffrey Rush, the actor. I'm a doctor
You have
whose name is
Dr.
Jeffrey
Oscars.
Rush. It's because I'm in a rush. I don't have time for all my patients.
Do you have Dr. Oscar?
I do. I have Dockskers.
Dockskers. Yep, that was good. Indeed
Thank
is
you.
the hiring platform, Dr. Jeff, where
Thank
you
you.
can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't
Okay.
play that waiting game.
I hate it.
Don't spend hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills. It's a powerful hiring platform, Indeed, that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools, help you find matched candidates. They've got instant match.
Mm-hmm.
What do you love more than instant things?
Very few things. Instant Match really helps you identify candidates who shine.
Over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job descriptions the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. Okay,
Mhm.
makes hiring in all in one place so easy because of things like their hiring platform. Like, listen to me now. Okay?
I'm listening. Yeah.
Candidates you invite to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data.
Okay.
You get you one step closer to the hire by matching you with quality candidates immediately. And they show you candidates whose resumes match your description right after you post. I already said that.
And I will say, from experience, if I could just quickly butt in here very quickly, they can help you find anyone for any position. If you need like a speech pathologist to help you with a king who has a stutter, you need someone to produce one of Shakespeare's shows under like kind of crazy circumstances, a skeleton pirate, captain of a ship, any hiring position Indeed can find someone to fit your needs.
So one thing is that you can start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit
No waiting.
to
Hate the waiting game.
upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/check. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/check. Just go to Indeed.com/check. Support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast.
Quickly.
Indeed.com/check. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed.
You heard about it quickly. We
Get
didn't
outta
waste
here.
any time. Okay, bye.
Yes. The writing process is complicated. There's like 3 different writers. Park Chan-wook is doing a lot of rewrites. Choi Min-Sik is very involved. They're like running all kinds of stuff by him. He, for example, comes up with the octopus eating scene, even though he is like a Buddhist vegetarian who does not usually eat live octopi. And
When you say not usually, what, like once a month?
exactly,
Yeah.
right. I do think that is, people do eat live octopus. That is a concept in cuisine.
well,
they chop it up for you. Obviously.
Right,
You don't
like
just
they
put the whole dang
kill
thing
it.
in your mouth.
It's like
Right.
still like
It's still kind
moving,
of
but
twisting
like that's
around.
like kind of like
Part of the
nerve
fun.
ending stuff of it. But like
Woo!
you're not like it's being served like here it is, an octopus, and then like,
Right.
There's like a clip from some DVD extra behind the scenes that's on YouTube that you can see where he like apologizes to the octopus each time.
Well, that's nice at least.
It's like, I'm sorry.
It had to do with like
4 times,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Octopus is good.
I mean, delicious
Yeah.
but complex.
I know. I feel bad because they're pretty smart. I mean, not that has stopped me from eating other animals that are
Also
supposedly smart.
Look,
yeah.
this is a long road we can go down.
Yeah, I guess, ethically compromised. That's me. But yeah, I think what makes that scene beyond like shock value so like seared in my brain is that the like tentacles keep twisting around his
That's what I was
face.
gonna
You know,
say.
they
It's
like
just
it's
like-
like
That was a scene.
Yeah.
where I had been told it was one of the 3 things you heard about the movie. Like there's this scene where he fucking smashes everyone with a hammer.
Yeah.
There's a scene where he eats an octopus whole. And I just remember being like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I cannot conceive of
what does that mean?
Like, and so what I imagined was horrible. And then the movie it is at the rare time where it's actually kind of more disturbing than what you could imagine.
Yes.
But it's also like of the moments of like just really this like nihilistic jolts. Like, you know, I'd say that like the scene where he's walking away and the guy falls on the car behind him and he like grins has that same energy.
Yes.
The octopus. There are a few moments like where you're just that you really, I feel like that is what the film wants to offer more than anything is this like look at how fucked up this is, but also isn't it thrilling? Like you've never seen this before.
There was an anecdote, maybe it was from the producer, the DP, saying when they shot that day where he does the smile after the guy falls on the car, that might have been the first day of the movie, or if not, was very early on in the shoot. And he said, like, I want you to give me a smile where I can't tell if you're about to laugh or cry. And he did that, and like Park like rubbed his hands together, and he's like, we have a movie.
Yes,
with sort of like that's the tone I'm trying to achieve. We've got it in that shot. Now I know what to pursue. But yes, no, the octopus thing is wild.
Biggest problem Park has with the screenplay is the ending, which I think is probably initially hewing more to the original.
Okay.
Didn't like the ending, had to think of a new ending. And as you say, he basically is just kind of like, well, incest is the worst thing imaginable.
Most shameful.
Yeah. You know, that's I think that really, he says he came up with it while he was going to the bathroom. I don't know what that means, but he basically like came out of the bathroom at some restaurant and like said to his producer, like, I've got a great idea. You know, like, here's what we're going to do. He thinks it's quote unquote a happy ending, but he sort of means that, I think, in a tragic, horrifying way.
Yeah.
He did ban his daughter, his oft mentioned daughter, from seeing the film. He deemed it too awkward for her to see it.
Yeah, certainly.
He talks all the time, Allison, in these dossiers about like the movies he makes where he's like, I made it for my daughter, and you're like, you did? Like Stoker is one where he's like, and I wanted to make a movie about a 19-year-old girl.
Too. I mean, these are like, episodes, coming up.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
But this is the one where you're just very relieved to hear he did not make it for his daughter.
Right.
That he in fact said, my daughter is banned from seeing this movie.
So Oldboy, let's talk about it. It's about a businessman who is arrested for public drunkenness. He's being a bit of a rascal.
You open with the rooftop scene where he's holding a guy by the tie,
being like, you want to hear my life story, bro?
Yeah.
And you're like, who the fuck is this guy? And then it cuts to him as a drunken businessman.
Right.
Where he looks so radically different, not just in obviously how he's styled, but also just like, oh, this guy has life in his eyes.
Yeah, but he was also like, he lost weight, right, for this role, and he clearly is like bigger in that, like deliberately. Yeah.
Yes.
His face is different.
Very, very different. Where the first time I saw this, I thought we were cutting to a different person.
Right.
I remember it taking me a little while to realize once he gets into imprisonment, oh, it's the same guy from the opening. And then they bring us back around. But yes, he's drunk. It's his daughter's birthday. He's fucking up. He's not getting home in time. His best friend is trying to help him out. He's at the police station, right, with this drunken, disorderly.
He's been picked up for public drunkenness. He misses his daughter's birthday.
Kind of very depressing phone call apologizing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He's got the angel wings like as a present, right?
Yes.
And he gets picked up by his friend, and I guess he's going to go home, and then he gets kidnapped and put into a weird hotel room with a pet door.
But you just immediately don't really like this guy. You're like, this guy's annoying.
No, he's like falling all over the floor. He's like such a buffoon.
And it's so like self-amused. Like, this is the guy where if he gets on your subway car, you move to a different subway car.
Yeah. Also, the scene where he disappears, it's like this kind of, it's like a crane shot, right? Like, it's like there's something which is like so like Park Chan-wook, where he has this kind of like moments of like these kind of classical, like, just like in terms of how he frames things and like moves the camera in the middle of this movie that also then has,
wait, is it in this or because we're doing all these movies? I don't like. There's one shot where like the camera goes between two people and around.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know how you did that. It doesn't look handheld. Like, I just am watching it being like, what is this?
Yeah.
What did you do? There's not enough space for you to like lay a track, but I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so cool. Every movie of his has some shot like that where you're just like, I don't understand this.
I do think there's something
Decisionally full of them. I know
Right.
it has a lot of visual effects and stuff. But
we talked a lot about in the first episode how he grew up at a time where there wasn't that much of a South Korean cinema, and he is mostly seeing films from other countries. He's not going to the theater much. He's seeing whatever's on TV, and it's a lot of classic Hollywood, and it's a lot of new wave French films. And I'm sure they were subtitled, but he's young. It makes sense cinematically in terms of how his sense of language develops visually, right? That this is a guy who's probably getting a lot more from the cinematic technique as a child than understanding the nuances of plot points, right?
Yeah.
Like he's sitting there watching grown-up movies with his parents on TV, and he's really going like, why is the camera doing that?
Right.
You know?
Right.
What is getting taken with the images of stars'
I
faces?
don't think I thought about that until I was older, like a teenager or something.
Right.
You know, like when I'm a kid, I don't think I was like, what's the camera doing?
Yeah, like I was just trying to follow narrative.
Right,
But
it's
yeah,
all
I think you can
story.
see it all over his work where he just
Yeah.
like absorbed so much of this.
Yes.
And then this really, in a way that I think it's not deployed in the same way that if you had just gone to a film school,
Yeah.
that you would kind of have learned maybe a more narrow path towards that. He kind of deploys them really in ways that are very unexpected.
I just think there's something to this generation that he's part of South Korean directors who didn't really have a local national cinema culture to grow up around, and everything they were digesting was imported from other countries, right? They're not seeing cinema reflect their daily existence, their culture, and it's not in their language. It all feels a little foreign and alien to them. And so they're processing it in kind of maybe a little bit of a backwards way where the technique is coming through first and foremost.
Film stars Choi Min-Sik.
Mhm.
The villain is played by this actor, Yoo Tae.
Another incredible performance.
An amazing performance. However, that man is also significantly younger than
Yes.
Choi Min-Sik, and it's not hidden in the movie.
Right, no.
It makes no sense that they would be classmates.
Yeah.
To the point that like you're almost like, what's the further tryst here? And it's like, no, they just were classmates. Don't think about it.
Right. I think they're the closest they come to addressing is being like, well, he was like 2 years below him. I'm like, this guy was 15
2
years
dog
below
years
him.
below him?
Yeah.
Right. And he wanted Park wanted to cast this actor Han Suk-kyu, who is the co-star of Choi Min-Sik in this film Number 3 and another film called Shiri, both of which were like smash hits.
Yeah,
Okay.
Shiri was like a blockbuster video standard also.
Probably just trying to
Interesting.
be like, hey man, let's get the gang together here.
Yeah.
But Choi Min-Sik is like, no, cast this younger guy. I really like his vibe, and he is amazing in the movie. And I think the overall thinking on the age thing was like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
this movie is so chaotic. Let's just embrace it
Sure.
and be unconventional. Like everything else about the movie is so
Yeah.
unconventional.
Well, he also like has such this like rarefied wealthy person life that you can just kind of accept that like, oh, like life is just less hard on you.
He's
like
bathing
you
in blood.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Bathing in
right.
blood, the way that rich people we all know.
Yeah.
Too. I also
We were talking about this off mic.
We were talking
by the
about
way,
this
so
off-
it's really weird that you just refer to that.
What do you mean? We all know
offhandedly.
this.
we all
No,
know.
normal.
We were all in on normal.
Yes.
And to be clear, we were talking about it off mic because we all do it.
Of course.
We
That's
all
why
have
we
this
look so beautiful with
We
our
look
bouncing skin and
incredible.
just
Yeah.
glowing. Anyway, I was gonna say there was that one shot where he is like doing that like yoga move where he like
Yes.
lifts his like legs up
Right.
and he has headphones on and is crying and you just see his like miserable face as he like impossibly lifts like half his body off in the air, and it is just such an indelible image. Like that is actually alongside the octopus, like one of the scenes I remember the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And
Yeah.
his like hair helmet. He has like the firmest raised
does.
slick back hair.
Super gelled. Yeah, like you feel like you could snap it off. Yeah.
They said that the whatever the gel, whatever the product they used was so strong that to get it out, they would like end up removing clumps of hair. That by the end of it, he was like patchy, and it took a while to grow back in. But I think there's something to the fact in terms of their age gap, and I don't think this was intentional at all. But it's part of why I maybe like accept it in some sort of a static truth kind of way, where it's like, well, our lead character has been in imprisonment for 15 years, and it's been a rough 15 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
where he
fair.
aged
Yes.
harder
He's got
than
the
most.
city miles. Yes.
And it's sort of like this guy is the exact same age he was when he imprisoned the other guy, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of them has sort of stayed exactly the same, and the other one has aged twice as fast.
all right. So the plot of the movie, right? He's in the hotel room. He's being fed dumplings every day via a pet door.
Mhm. They gas him.
They gas him.
Here's the thing with the gas.
No good.
It's definitely not good, but as someone who has trouble sleeping,
Oh, you kind of like the idea
Oh, yeah.
of like,
I was
it's
a
11
little,
p.m. I'm
You know
going to my
what?
room.
I was a little bit like, what if there was a fucking switch
Yeah.
in my room where I
Sure.
could gas my ass?
Well,
The
what if it was
opposite of
just
an
like-
air purifier.
A big
Yeah.
boxing
Right.
glove that just like, and then you're like,
But the thing is,
Well,
they
I
make the
do
gas,
like that too,
Yeah.
David. I do
the
like
gas
that
looks so
too.
peaceful. Like
Yeah.
he's often in bed already, and they're just like, yes.
I
That's
yes.
understand.
insane.
But it's
Yeah.
one of those things that's on the bleeding edge of being like, what if I just died?
I mean, look, you raised some interesting points. There's something. Let's explore that. No,
yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if I heard like that's another thing crazy rich people do. Is like bathe in blood, use Ozempic, gas themselves to sleep,
Right.
so you get a
I
solid
mean, that's
10.
basically what Michael Jackson was doing, right? He had to be like
Yeah. Well, yeah.
sedated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
to
Are you
sleep.
guys on gas TikTok?
And I
It's
always-
so just prolific.
I
and
always-
Lady
cool.
Gaga has total gas face.
It's one of
right
my
now. I don't know
favorite
if you've noticed.
concepts in Inception. Is the people who are like, yeah, we've done Inception too long to actually be able to go to sleep, so we have to be put to sleep by the machine
I
now.
think about
Yeah.
that scene all the time.
Just all the
fact
people,
that
like,
movie
lying
just
out
fucking
there.
drops that in for one scene,
So
and it
cool.
doesn't factor back into the plot.
So he goes crazy. He starts imagining ants crawling over himself.
Mhm.
He tries to kill
He
himself.
starts stitching lines into his hand
Eventually,
for
right.
every year.
Right.
Sort of manually tattoos himself.
He has the line I butchered, which would it have been easier if going in I knew it was going to be 15 years, which is right off the bat. You see him imprisoned. You don't know how long it's going to be. He says that line before we're basically seeing the time lapse of all his time. So you're just like, 15 years, holy fucking shit.
Right.
And it is a good question.
Yes.
Is it easier to survive if you think every day I might get out tomorrow?
Right.
Or if you know it's going to be 15 years, I just got to ride this out?
He's trying to dig a tunnel,
Mhm.
but he is on like a high floor.
Yes.
Like he does
It's
eventually
also
like punch
taking
a hole
an
in the wall.
incredibly long time.
Right.
So yeah, no.
And also like he's being watched, which I feel like he
Yeah.
sort of knows.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He gets TV.
He does get TV, so he watches. I do love that montage of like all the historical events that happen,
Mhm.
some of which I'm like, well, sure, 9/11, Princess Diana dying, and others are like presidents being elected and like the, reopening of Hong Kong and things like that,
Oh, let's
that are more
mention
specific.
the other thing he gets from the TV is that he has been framed for his wife's murder.
Yes, he gets that right away.
Right.
And then one day he gets out. He wakes up in a suitcase.
He
That's
wakes
on
up
a
in the middle of the
grassy
night
roof.
to a woman hypnotizing
Well,
him.
first there's that. Sure, yes.
Right. And then the next thing he knows, he's in a suitcase in the middle,
Which was the central marketing image of Spike Lee's remake of this film.
which is
Was
fascinating.
the suitcase.
Yes.
Not a bad image, to be clear.
No,
It's
it's
kind
a
of
great. I mean, like
arresting.
it's and especially it's like shot from above,
Right.
and you don't, and then you understand that you're not in a field, you're on a rooftop in a,
Now,
I-
I've
either
never
of you-
seen.
No,
I've
I haven't
never seen it. Have you seen it?
Oh no.
I-
Well, do you know what? Actually, I think I may have, but I have retained nothing. Like it's gone. Like it's gone from my head.
I know it has this reputation of like there's actually a decent cut of it that never
They
went out.
released it 105 minutes.
Right, they
Brolin
cut it
said
to
Spike
ribbons.
Lee's cut was up 140 and
Right.
was good.
Right. I have who knows,
Yeah.
but a truly like forgotten thing
Colossal.
is that
flop.
happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
Made zero money. It was released by like Film District.
Right. Starring Thanos and Scarlet Witch.
Right. True. And like as far as I know, that movie is basically identical plot wise. Like it has the incest twist.
Yes. Though I think at the end,
They
He
don't end up
checks-
together.
no, I think
Right.
he like checks himself back into the prison.
Right, that's
Right,
maybe
that's-
the one
no,
difference.
He
And he's
punishes
like paying
himself.
for it.
He
himself,
has
yeah.
nonetheless in that movie he had sex with his dog.
Yes,
like
yeah.
that
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah.
certainly
Yes.
in the film.
No, the wild thing is because when this came out, by the time it finally came out in the United States, I remember it already being announced, obviously with all of its hype, with Khan and everything. Justin Lin is going to remake this with Nicolas Cage.
Right.
I went into it thinking, how will Nicolas Cage do this movie? I remember the
I
whole
do
time
remember the
watching
Cage
it,
thing, yeah.
and then you get to the end and you go, well, they're never going to let this happen in an American film, right?
Yeah.
And then a couple years after that, Spielberg and Will Smith are going to make it.
Yes, I remember the Will Smith
Yeah.
thing.
And that's
yeah.
a public announcement. And then it came out like, we're actually doing a different adaptation of the comic. We're not looking to remake Park Chan-wook's film, we will be changing the plot, right? And then it kind of came out that they had gotten the rights from the Korean company that had made the Park Chan-wook film, but that those rights didn't enable them to be able to sell the underlying comic rights.
Right.
So they were like, the only thing you could do is remake the film literally, at which moment Spielberg and Smith tap out, and suddenly it's Spike Lee.
Yes.
And Josh Brolin is his 10th choice.
And it's like one of the only films that is a Spike Lee film, not a Spike Lee joint, because it's like his version of taking the name
the
off
closest
the
he
movie.
comes.
Right.
Yeah. But it's wild that, then they just had Spike Lee remake it pretty straightforwardly with all the fucked up shit.
Right. It's in New Orleans, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it is a basic retelling.
Yes.
But
But
whatever. Just
my
kinda
main thing, when I
whatever.
watch this version, I go, God, Charlton Copley would really lend.
That's true. That's actually the worst curse. It was made during the brief, like, Charlton Copley should be in everything.
They put him in everything.
phase.
Yeah. And he does the same thing in everything.
I'm crazy.
Hello, listen to me. Movie.
Oh, you're just saying it.
Movie. David, pull it up.
Episode is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema around the globe. Listen,
I'm listening.
I will pull it up, but they want me to tell you about some of the stuff they have coming up in July.
Well, I'd love to hear it.
July 1st, they've got Synecdoche, New York, one of our favorite movies.
One of my favorite movies of all
Also
time.
on that.
Yep.
July 5th, they got Mia Hansen Love's film, A Pure Spirit, Un Pur Esprit.
I've never seen that one.
I haven't either. It's a short
Interesting.
documentary, I
Blind
believe.
spots.
They've also got coming up throughout July various Wong Kar-wai films.
One of your
2046,
favorites.
Ashes of Time Redux,
Mhm.
which is cool. His sort of revamped take on Ashes of Time. The Grandmaster,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a double bill from Robert Altman. California
Love to see
Split in Kansas City. I've never seen Kansas City.
David, Kansas City rules.
I know that, and it's very hard to see that one.
I'm trying to think if it's my
If it's your what?
favorite 90s Altman.
Wow, the player's pretty good.
And Shortcuts. But I'm like,
Shortcuts is good.
Kansas City, I think is really
I've never seen it.
good.
I've always wanted to. Jennifer Jason Leigh, right?
Jennifer Jason Leigh, Miranda Richardson giving an unbelievable performance, and the great Harry Belafonte, who just lost us. It left us. We just lost Harry Belafonte.
He lost us.
We lost him.
We did.
He left us. It is perhaps his greatest film performance.
Listen,
He's incredible. He plays a villain
I love Harry Belafonte.
against type.
All right, I'm going to watch all that stuff. You can try Mubi free for 30 days at Mubi.com/blankcheck. That's MUBI.com/blankcheck for a whole month of great cinema for free. And of course, always worth pointing out as we record these episodes that Decision to Leave, the most recent film by Park Chan-wook, is exclusively available on Mubi.
Do they have the other Vengeance movies on right now? They did recently.
I'm not sure. Griffin.
That's why I asked.
I'll put his name in and see. They do have Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and Lady Vengeance.
Look at that.
They also have his short film Judgment.
Hey, now.
Which people keep telling me to watch.
Well, maybe
including
we
a certain
will.
social media editor who's sitting right next
right
to me
there,
right
nodding
now.
vigorously.
And we're done.
Bye.
Oldboy. Okay, so he gets out, and yes, who is this man on the roof? That's
He's
the one-
going to commit suicide, right?
He's going to kill.
He's just a guy who happened to
unrelated.
be there. Just
Yeah,
happened
he's
to be
just
there.
A depressed man.
Yeah.
He thinks his life's bad.
Right.
Right.
Wait till he talks to this guy.
I hate that he has this dog.
I know. I was upset about that too.
Yeah. I
hate
yeah.
that.
I
That's
was just
the
like,
thing
that
that's
dog did
upsetting
not
for
do
me.
anything to deserve this.
Maybe
No.
the dog wrote a suicide note as well. That maybe the dog was like, "Hey, please, I can't get to the top of a building by myself." We hate this joke. Go on, David.
No, Griffin.
We hate
The
this.
whole
Here's
room.
the thing,
the
Griffin.
whole room is
Disaster.
Here's the thing, Griffin.
Absolute disaster. Show is canceled.
Look, obviously, I don't love animal cruelty in films, but like
I don't either.
No. But I'm saying, but it does not bother me. I'm not a pet owner,
Sure.
and I do feel like I'm like, well, yeah, it bounces off me a little better for what. And I know there's some people who are like, you have to tell me, like, hey,
Yes.
did you see that movie? You have to tell me what happens to the dog? Like because they know like I won't be able to hack it.
Sam
It's like-
Rogel, one of my best friends, past and future guest, loves the John Wick franchise more than anything. Every time a new one comes out, he does an all-day marathon, which now takes a
but he
while.
skips
Yeah.
the dog killing.
And he's just like, when the first one came out, I was not a dog owner. Since then, I am. It's my closest relationship with my wife in my life more than my wife.
Right.
And he's like, I now just start John Wick, 20 minutes in,
Sure.
or I skip that one
Sure,
scene.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Forky has seen John Wick 3 or 4 times, and she definitely has never watched that scene. She just leaves
Yeah.
the room. Anyway, right. So she recounts things to the rooftop man, goes
I
downstairs.
bet you're wondering how I ended up here. He
Right.
gives him the full
And then the
story.
rooftop man does kill himself,
Yeah.
and he's kind of like...
Well, they also have that funny bit where the rooftop man's like, "Now let me tell you my story," and he's just like, "Nope."
He's like,
and he's
I don't care.
I don't know what you thought this was, but this is not what we're doing.
No.
Yeah.
And then pretty much right away, he ends up in the Chinese, the sushi restaurant.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
Chinese restaurant, sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
Wait, the Chinese restaurant is later. That's
Is
how
the
he
dumplings.
figures out.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. The sushi restaurant. Well, because he's been hypnotized, right? He's like, they're like,
He has been, as we later know,
Yes.
he's been
Yes,
essentially
yes.
subliminally told to go into
I
this
had
restaurant.
forgotten, not having seen this film in almost 2 decades, that she was hypnotized as well.
Right.
And I was
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, this is really a big ass that she falls for him this
Oh,
immediately.
yeah. No,
Because
it's
he's not appealing.
Yes.
No, he's in fact aggressively unappealing.
unappealing. And
she-
also treats her terribly.
Not very
Yeah.
nice,
Yes.
and eats a giant octopus.
have to imagine
Yeah.
he smells terrible. Like everything about this
Well,
guy.
they gave him a new suit and everything.
what?
So, he might actually smell okay.
Fresh linen.
Yeah.
But yes, no, she's just immediately
Yeah,
like
she's like,
touching him.
Oh, man, that guy who just came in here
Yeah.
and live octopus. That's
Right.
what I want.
And then like slammed his head against the counter after taking a phone call.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me bring him back to my place.
Yes.
Brings him back to her place, and she wins him over. But again, all of this is pre-programmed in a way, so it's almost silly to talk
But
about.
also, like
right.
he tries to assault her, right? Like immediately, like
While she's on the toilet, he
Yes,
just walks into the
yes.
bathroom and tries to start making stuff happen.
yeah,
Right.
and nothing dissuades her. Like nothing.
Well, her response to that is, we don't know each other's names yet.
Yes.
Obviously, I want to have sex with you because I
Right.
invited you back to my place. Let's just do this in the right order.
Right.
Whereas I would be like, get out of my place, but I'm not hypnotized.
hypnotized.
I'm not a hypnotized.
And I feel like, yeah, fairly quickly they start to zero in on like, okay, well, who is delivering the dumplings?
Right.
That's how we'll figure out,
This actress who plays
Mido.
Mido, when she was auditioning,
Kang Hei Jung.
yes, she had to audition with the sushi restaurant scene, and she came in with a giant sushi knife and did her audition with the knife. And then, like,
Right.
obviously, no other prep. She's not like chopping up food, but she was just like acting with a knife in her hand.
Sure, she had a prop.
And they were like, you brought the knife all the way from home for the audition? And she was like, no, I realized on the walk over here I should probably have a knife. So I just kind of jumped into a restaurant and asked if I could borrow one. And they were like, what do you, they don't let you borrow knives at
I
restaurants.
personally have never asked to borrow a knife at a restaurant. I've never been like, can I take the check? And also, can you lend me a knife?
Well, especially those are probably really expensive.
Thank
knives.
you.
yeah, they're fancy.
So she was like,
Keep them sharp.
I was just like, they have a ton of them.
she's
They can't,
she's very charming.
right. Her mind was, they have so many of them, they'll be fine letting me take one for 45 minutes. And they were so astounded they said that then Park Chan-wook went over to the restaurant and said, like, can you just verify this story
Is
for me?
real, right?
And I think, like, the fact that that was so compellingly weird was basically the reason they cast her.
Yes. He was also apparently it's basically like she's so like without shame and
Mhm.
without guile, I guess. Like
Yes.
to do something like that is so crazy.
Yeah.
My brother once when he was young got hired, probably shouldn't tell the story.
Mhm.
Whatever. Got hired for a job.
Okay.
And then like a few weeks later, one of the people at the job was like, yeah, it's so crazy you got this job after the almonds. And my brother was like, what do you mean? And they were like, in the middle of the interview, you just opened a pack of almonds and started eating them without addressing the situation, like without being like, hey, by the way, I'm really hungry, or I have to eat almonds to live, or just do Joey apparently just like casually.
I think that's a power move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think and the guy was like, and we just had no idea why you did that, and
Yeah.
we did discuss it, and I do think it
no,
secretly
it is.
worked to his advantage.
It's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
It's like this. It's just insane confidence.
Yeah.
And my brother's 100% was just like, oh, I was just hungry and I had almonds in my pocket. Like, I think he wasn't
Yeah.
thinking about it.
At least they were in a package.
Yeah, he didn't just pull out some loose
Oh,
almonds.
yeah, that
Right.
would be too far. It would just be there.
That would be kinda
this
gross.
is a lot,
Right.
man.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Okay, so they figure out the Chinese restaurant that is making his prison food. And so through
Right.
that,
Once
they
they're
get to
teamed
the
up,
prison.
He's like, I want answers. I'm on the case now.
Right.
Want to find out what happened to my daughter. Want to find out who imprisoned me.
She's read his journals too, and she's kind of gotten invested through reading his life story and really wanting to help.
To be fair, a pretty nuts story.
Yeah, it's an interesting story.
Yeah.
She's also like got the weird chat room thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a kind of very underdeveloped little thread in there where
It's just
she's
kind of
been
in there.
chatting with someone online who turns out to be very important to this story. Yeah.
I feel like there's one other thing about this. I don't remember. But basically, yes, with her gumption and his hammer skills,
They can do anything.
they're an undefeatable team.
Pretty quickly, she finds what she thinks is information about his daughter.
Right.
Saying-
That's the thing. They dismissed the daughter thing pretty quickly.
She was
like,
adopted by a
right.
couple in Switzerland or
Sweden.
so
Sweden.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Right.
You
That's
won't
it, yeah.
find her, but she's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
They kind of just
They give her a
swipe
piece
that
of
away.
paper with an international number and like a Swedenized name and everything. And he's just like, you know what? I don't need to fucking interrupt her life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they go to the prison,
Mhm.
which is just
And it's
one
a
of
good
those,
thing, by the way, they push the daughter out of the plot because then we just never have to
Never
think
comes
about
up
that
again.
ever again. And it's
Never
just,
again. It's just taken care of.
go to the prison, one of those classic hotel prisons. The guy's like, I fucking
Yeah.
run like 20 of these rooms.
Yeah.
Easy.
I
Dumplings,
just have so many
gas.
questions.
I have all the permits.
Just like if we could have just like hovered there for like a half an hour in the middle where he just explains the business model and the workings, it would have
It
been
is a
amazing.
fanciful
Yes.
thing.
I would
yes.
love a spin-off workplace sitcom about this.
Well, especially because he mentions he's like, some people they do the business with like people who need bodyguards, but like we don't do that. Like, our niche in the private hotel prison business, which
be
is like
like,
thriving industry.
Really?
Apparently.
Some people do that?
Yeah.
How do you find, like, where this guy is like, I need to punish this man? Can you find anyone who,
Like
runs
in between floors on a building.
right,
and
runs
just-
like a
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
7th and a half
Right.
floor
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of vibe.
Well, he also there's one part where he's on the phone to a client and he says like, well, if it's a stay for longer than 6 months, transport is free, which presumes that they're comparing prices and deals also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a competitive business. 15 years, you're going to rack up quite a bill.
Yeah.
Do you think they make him put down a card for incidentals?
Definitely, yes. And then, they email him every year. Your cards expire. Yeah.
Great.
I think do we think it's a real thing that exists in the world?
Ben.
Well, there's another movie about a hammerman
I
that
do.
has sort of that.
I think rich
that
people
thing,
do shit.
you're never
this.
really here.
Oh, yes.
Also has like the creepy person. Obviously, that's sort of
Yeah.
sex trafficking kind of thing.
It's
you
the
know.
bordello version of
Right,
this.
right.
Yeah, I don't know. In terms of just like a revenge prison where you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you know what, David? That's a great counter. Like, that's a deeply disturbing movie that I'm obsessed with and watch compulsively.
I mean, I think that movie is very good.
yeah.
I don't think you should be watching it compulsively.
I study it like the blade.
No,
but I think that's one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years.
A very sort of nasty idea of what life is like right now.
Right.
But that also, like, that is another movie where the main character is kind of cast as like a creature almost. Like there's something very like animal, like Choi Min-Sik, his character in this movie describes himself as a monster constantly.
Yes.
And there is something of the monster to him.
Absolutely.
And I think in that movie too, he's like a beast.
I wasn't thinking of the comparison. And perhaps this is something I need to litigate with my therapist tomorrow. But I don't know why I'm like so all in on that. A movie I've like recommended to certain people, and they're just like, that's just too much for me.
That movie is much.
Absolutely.
It's very much.
Right. And then
And
like
features a hammer.
yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
That's
of
what I'm saying.
hammer.
Another
He's an
hammerman.
unkempt
Yeah.
hammerman.
But that movie is like, it's just like all of the kind of brutality is so concentrated. And this movie, it's so like lurid and kind of
Yeah.
gothic.
Yeah.
There's something like it kind of revels in it in a different way.
Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it really kind of licks its lips over some of this stuff.
Yeah. Whereas you were never really here is pretty mopey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So yeah, he interrogates the hotel guard. Right.
Yes.
In this scene, he uses his hammer
Mm.
You
to
get
pull
that.
his teeth out.
Yeah.
You get that great moment where he like turns around and there's the hammer and he gets the dotted line like down
Oh.
directly.
So that's the guy's bodyguard or whatever, right? Like we don't even see him hit him with
he's
a
just
hammer.
like
right?
working in the hallway.
That
yeah.
is so good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like fucking French New Wave or
Right.
whatever. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
delightfully out of
That's a moment where Tarantino must have like jumped out
exactly.
of his chair.
I'm just like
number
that's like
one.
the square.
But then number two, I feel like is Tarantino's probably like, fuck, this guy actually puts the hammer in the tooth in a close up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't do that in like Reservoir Dogs or whatever.
Tarantino always does that thing of like the best movies made since I started making movies. He always has this qualified list of like well, from the moment I become a filmmaker, I view films differently, right? And I feel like this is one of very few films he cites that was made since he became a director that he is jealous of. Whereas like Battle Royale, Matrix, this, like these are the movies where I was like, I don't know how the fuck these guys did this.
Right.
Yeah.
That dotted line moment makes me think of Looney Tunes. Where
Yeah.
I wanted it to be like
Wile E.
Hammer's
Coyote.
Right.
Yeah, like
Yeah, like
two
don't
smash
freeze.
up
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah.
A crazy thing in the documentary, just a tiny little thing. They were talking to the actor, the hotelier, about that scene. And he said, like, it wasn't painful at all. It's just a sponge they painted silver and cut into the shape of the back of a hammer. And then they cut in the shot again. And it's crazy where if you're looking at it and you know to look for that, you're like, yeah, that no way looks real.
Right.
But in the moment, within context, you get so caught up on it. And it's such a tight close up. It's not like they're cutting away from it quickly.
His like tongue is like there kind of flapping in the
it's
shot.
So fucking nasty.
Yeah.
And it's rigged with blood spurting out and all of this.
Yeah. Tooth stuff. I feel like the
Don't
only
like
thing that's
tooth
worth
stuff.
is like eye stuff.
Eye
Eye
stuff's
stuff
my
is really
biggest-
nasty.
Eye stuff is the worst for me.
I have come to feel better about eye stuff because I'm just like, for some reason, I've seen enough of it that I'm like, this is fake. Because there's just always that moment where you're like, well, now it's fake. You know, there's a bunch of goo getting squirted out or
I don't know.
whatever.
Also,
I don't love it, to
No.
be clear.
I love having eyes too.
I love having eyes. And also one
Face
time,
eggs.
you know, I got
Face
LASIK
eggs.
like a few years ago. And LASIK is like the most body horror
That scares
shit
the
imaginable.
shit out
Yeah,
of
no,
me.
it really
Terrified.
like it's like 20 minutes of just like full on Cronenberg like
Yeah.
awfulness. And then so really just emphasized to me how bad eye stuff is.
Don't want it.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, pulling teeth out, I don't know. Don't like that at all.
fingernails get me.
Fingernails.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
rare to see some fingernail stuff. When you do, it's usually really, really
so
horrible.
bad.
What's the movie? There's some big film where they do fingernail torture that I feel like I watched recently.
Yeah, I feel like I saw something recently too, but I can't remember what it was.
Oh, a Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, you know, right after this pretty much is, he tells him he was put in prison for talking too much. I feel like that's the
Yes.
big revelation, really.
Mhm.
But after this is the hammer fight. The two most famous things about this movie, apart from the twist, are in the first sort of like 40 minutes of the movie. I feel
Yes.
like the octopus and the hammer fight.
It is a fascinating thing where like this is a movie where in theory recommending it to people should be difficult because you don't want to spoil any of it, right? But then there are these like couple of extreme things that happen early on that no way have to do with any of the twists or turns that you can just pitch to people.
Yeah.
This guy fucking fights a bunch of people with a hammer and he eats an octopus live. And they're like, and what's it about? And it's like, I can't tell you anything.
I mean, the thing I love about the hallway fight scene, beyond just that it is one
very,
take,
very
and it's
well
just like
done. Right.
it's so awkward.
Mhm.
You know, it's just there is this people who have vague ideas about how fighting works and maybe some experience, but like still are not, you know, like John Wick, you know,
It is
martial
not
arts
like
masters.
we programmed into a computer the puzzle of like a man moving through 12 people
Right.
with such balletic grace or whatever. No, it's just like a bunch of people charging
Yeah.
and he's just like
Lurching at each other. I mean, and then
being out of breath.
Yeah,
big,
they're
chubby,
tired.
sweaty
They get-
guys. You
like
know?
some of the guys are obviously more scared than others halfway
Yeah.
through and they're just like reluctant to try it. And then I had forgotten that he gets like stabbed halfway through and they're all like leaning around being like, is he dead? And then he like lurches back
Right,
up and
he's
they're like,
just got
ah,
it in the
yeah.
back.
Trance, which we talked about in the podcast,
Oh,
has
that
fingernail
has
shit.
fingernail stuff?
Mm.
Yeah,
That's what it was. I
guess
knew there was
so.
something we talked about recently that had fingernail
that's
shit.
You know, that's a wild movie.
Well, no, I think it's pretty normal.
Mm.
Um,
Well, it's about normal things.
Yes.
Right.
that is the single biggest influence of this movie. I think even though you're saying it's very different than John Wick, I'm like, I do think there is a long tail effect of this sort of like, you want to just watch a person move through a space,
Mhm.
right? And even just the lack of cleanness of the choreography of
Yeah.
just like, this is more behavioral.
Right.
And there are actual kind of character beats within it. I still feel like this is kind of what people are striving for all the time.
Yeah, and a bunch of people have tried to rip it off or
Yeah.
pay homage to it
Yeah.
over the years. But
To the extent that like the hallway fight has become its own thing.
Right, very much. Like
Right.
put a lot of people in an enclosed space, and then you have like Atomic Blondes, like we did that on a staircase or whatever.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
We're going to find different versions of an enclosed space.
The Marvel Netflix shows would each have one per season that was basically the big moment.
Yes.
The Daredevil had the most.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Iron Fist had one because I watched all of that one.
Yeah.
The elevator opens up and his smile,
Yeah.
and then to cut to then the
I think
elevator
that is
opening
very
again.
clever to
Yeah.
not give us another action sequence. To be like, you get it.
The Arrow box set I got is the elevator.
That's cool.
And
That's
it's like
nice.
the box is split vertically down the middle and you open it up and then it's just him. It's pretty good packaging design.
Something else I appreciate, we talked about he does look cool. He gets to do cool action stuff. He gets to beat up some dudes in the beginning, randomly just to try out. But I like that even though it is established that he has been like shadowboxing and punching a wall for, I don't know what, 10 of those 15 years or something, like some long time, that really his like superpower is just like this intense determination and not caring about anything else. Like that is the thing that actually gets him through this, is just a full willingness to dive into a group of like 10 dudes and be like, let's just get through this.
He needs to know why, and he needs to have his revenge. How is it then revealed who his captor is? How do we then? Because he comes in pretty soon after that.
He reveals himself to him. Is it
Right.
after that fight
Yes.
scene where he helps him get the cab
he does.
and then
he's got the bucket hat on and he puts
thinks
him in the
it's
cab.
just a friendly pedestrian.
Right, right. And he's basically like, look, if you can figure out why I did this, I will kill myself.
Yeah.
Well,
If not, I will kill Mido.
Yeah.
Kill
Also,
your
like
friend.
that first scene where like he picks him up on the sidewalk and puts him in the cab, he does his own smile, like his own like sinister smile, and it's just like framed like very deliberately that you don't see the top of his face first.
Yeah.
So this is a real battling of like broken smiles.
He is very frightening.
Yeah.
It is my
but
favorite.
also very handsome.
Yes, very, very attractive.
It's my favorite narrative conceit of this movie is just like you assume it's going to be a film where he's spending 2 hours to get to the answers. And instead, like halfway through, the guy is like, it's me. It's me, and I want you to know it's me. And now I'm testing you. I'm not hiding from you. And the film can cut away to him. We're not keeping him narratively in the shadows.
I've set up this game.
Yeah.
But now, even outside of the controlled prison environment, you're still within this system I've developed.
Every
and
time
designed.
you cut to like his henchmen briefing him on the updates and whatever, and you're just like, what is it this guy's trying to make happen? To what end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His weird penthouse apartment that's also just filled with hench people all the time.
I mean,
There's the blonde henchman who's kind of the number one henchman.
Yeah,
he's good.
yeah.
He's a good henchman.
like he's like a peroxide blonde henchman.
Yeah.
It's always good to have one of those guys where you're
You
like,
gotta have your guy who's like incredible at fighting.
right,
but,
who's like in a tracksuit or so. He's got kind of like a thing.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
like, that guy's going to die last.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing action.
Right. He's got that great final moment where he just starts weeping.
Yeah. He's honestly really, really good. I don't know the actor, but Kim Byung-ok. Yes. At this point is when he has sex with Mido. Right?
Yeah. No, I'd say
About
the sex
halfway into the
scene
movie.
is uncomfortable the first time.
It's very uncomfortable even before you
She
know
is
the
in
twist.
physical discomfort and keeps on communicating
Yes.
that she is actively uncomfortable but wants to do it for him.
And also, even before they have sex, when she is like, we will have sex eventually. I will I will sing the song so you know that I'm ready.
Yeah.
But also, I may still fight you. You've just
Right.
got to keep pushing through, which is an incredibly disturbing thing
It is. And
to say as a preface.
all this is because she's like hypnotized, right? Like, is that the implication of all of
Yes.
that? It's very strange.
Mhm.
Now, of course, it's also intentionally disturbing, I feel like, because it's going to be played at him later. Right? Like if it was a very like conventional sex scene, it would not like it needs to hit in this insane way at the end of the movie.
Insane way is the point. I mean, you could
Right.
just have it be a romantic sex scene in which they're saying "I love you," and if you replay that, that still is.
It would be
fucked up.
really weird, but I think it's all part of the like complete kind of like alien quality
The
of
fact
this.
that when it's played back, it's her saying like "I'm in immense pain."
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
much worse?
Yeah, and then like kind of wailing.
Right, but
Yeah.
I'm doing it for you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And he still looks like a complete freak, to be clear.
He looks horrible. I don't mean to shame.
Yeah, right.
But he looks very bad.
I appreciate that even I'm forgetting the name of the villain. even he is disturbed at this point.
Yes.
You know, going up to this,
Woo
where
Jin
he's,
is
where he's
yeah.
like, you know, do you think they're in love already? Like, really? Like, was that just like all
Right.
it took? Is kind of putting them
'cause
together.
You find out later, like, they could hypnotize him to the point of getting them to meet each other.
Right. But
He was hoping they could orchestrate the events to make them fall in love. And you sort of get the sense that he's like, that's like 4 months ahead of schedule. That's
right.
like
It
kind of
happened
fucked
really
up.
fast.
It happened this fast.
He's not aware of his powers.
Yes.
So then, right, he's eventually going to figure out what it is. Now, does he recognize this guy right away?
no, he doesn't
No, he
recognize him at
doesn't.
all.
No.
Right.
I mean, he didn't know this guy really.
Right.
you know.
That's the thing, right?
Right.
He just saw him one time and
Yeah.
said something, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way,
He
I mean,
set this chain of events in motion that he has no concept of.
you said the thing about our villain threatening to kill himself, or saying promising he will
Kill
himself.
him. If you figure
Right.
out the mystery, I will kill myself.
But the part of this is that he had heart surgery and he has a pacemaker, and he asked them to install the pacemaker with a kill switch and a remote control, so he can at any time, if he wants to, push the button and just fucking detonate his life immediately.
But that's all like a red herring, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
it's made up. But,
It is made
But the
up,
thing is,
right?
on the
Because he
scale of-
pushes the button at the end of the movie
and that
before the guy is shot
right,
himself.
and it triggers
And it
the,
turns
tape
on
recorder.
the tape recorder.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, the thing is, though, that seems totally reasonable compared in the scale of like all of the other things that happen in this
normal,
movie.
fine.
You're like, of course,
Yeah.
a doctor
Kill
would do that
switch.
for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why
Great.
wouldn't he want
Put
that?
it in.
Yeah.
I'm what, 38? Fine.
So I think also another important point that it never quite like cemented for me until I saw this most recent time is that he doesn't know that he's witnessing incest. He just thinks he's seeing, when you see the flashback, he's
100%.
like, he
He's
sees this
just like,
girl
those
he
two are hanging
knows.
out.
He
Right.
sees this girl he knows, and she's hooking up with a guy. And like, that is the rumor. Like, it's not like the rumor was ever like this brother and sister. Were,
No,
like,
yeah,
involved.
he is
Yeah.
not aware of the accusation he's making, essentially,
Right.
by
He has
saying
seen,
that.
he has seen
casually.
something like much more ruinous, but actually all it takes to kind of destroy this girl is a rumor that she was hooking up with someone. and
Right.
that
Suppose
she was pregnant.
she got a phantom pregnancy
Yes.
or what, a hysterical pregnancy, and thus they thought, it was an incestuous pregnancy, and she
Mhm.
killed herself, and that's why he's doing all of this, and that's what's going on.
Yes.
Oldboy,
Right.
2003.
And so as punishment, he has
Uh-huh.
tricked him into fucking his daughter.
That's right.
Yep.
He is, and so it's like this movie builds to a final half hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's all basically in this like spa apartment.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
she's being
That's the
held
villain's lair
by one of the
yes.
henchmen at his or her grimy place. No, she's back at the hotel room. Where is
Yeah,
she?
no, he
yes,
takes-
right.
Yeah.
So, Desu takes her to the prison, the hotel prison,
Yeah.
because he thinks that now the hotel guy is on his side, like the
Sure.
enemy of my enemy. So he's like, this will be a safe place. Right. His hand.
Oh
hand
right,
got-
there's the
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
that whole sequence also
Yeah.
where the hotel guy's about to kill him,
right.
and then gets paid a giant suitcase of money to not do it.
Yes. And
Yeah.
then later they get his hand delivered with
Right.
the ring on it. Yeah.
Yes.
So
and she says something to him when he's now got the fake hand that his hand rotted and they threw
right.
it out.
But they gave him the ring.
Oh,
They're like,
God.
we took the ring off. Here you
So
go.
sick.
Yeah. But so that's why he's like, this will be a good place to keep her.
Yes.
She'll be safe here.
Yeah. And just good memories, good time.
Right, exactly.
She's
She'll
watching
just
TV.
like being
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. That's
But-
what my pandemic apartment felt like.
I
gotta
had the
fucking
same.
move.
I had the same
Yeah.
thought.
God,
It's
I'm
hard not to,
Yeah,
think
just
about
like
being
sitting
locked
there
inside.
getting delivery and watching TV.
And that was,
Yeah.
obviously our experiences during the pandemic were exactly like Desu's experiences in Oldboy.
David?
Yep.
Do you want to get nuts?
Yes.
Let's get nuts.com.
Woo!
I like snacks, David. I
You
like
love
a snack
snacks?
attack.
Uh-huh.
How about you?
Yeah, I love snacks. I love nuts. I love sweets.
This is the thing.
I love
easy for me to reach
savories.
for some junk, some trash.
Okay.
But nuts.com offers so many good options. Because you hear the name, you go, I get it, nuts.
Cashews.
Yeah, that's just the start of things.
Gummy bears.
Yes.
Olives.
Uh-huh.
Popcorn.
Chocolate
Saltwater
espresso,
taffy.
beans.
Trail mix.
Ooh.
Sesame sticks.
Hmm.
Dried fruit.
Love it.
They have a lot of good dried fruit.
Yeah.
It's a really good place. It's really easy to shop on, I've found.
Yes.
Like, it's really easy to sort through and look for
Mhm.
stuff. If you want quick snacks on the go, if you want stocked drawers at home, Nuts.com has you covered. And they cover that 11 a.m. feeling, Griffin,
My least favorite.
between breakfast and lunch.
feeling. Yes.
Yeah, you're Lisa. You're only half an hour from waking up at that point.
I was going to say, I'm about to go to sleep. I was going to even go further on your joke.
Nuts.com is your
Correct.
one-stop shop for freshly roasted nuts, dried fruit, sweets, pantry staples like specialty flours, and more. Their wide selection means there's something for everyone.
Yeah, they got gluten-free options.
Yep.
They got organic choices.
Yep.
They got diet-friendly products. It sweet, savory. You're looking for everyday cooking essentials.
I like their dried mangoes.
Well, look at you.
They've got all kinds of cool stuff.
Sure.
And, you can shop a la carte anytime.
Yeah.
You can have hassle-free auto deliveries so you never run out of your favorite items. All this great stuff.
Yeah.
Listen.
Here's my favorite thing about them.
What's up?
Nuts.com. It's just a great domain name.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got it.
Right now, Nuts.com is offering new customers a free gift with purchase and free shipping on orders of $29 or more at Nuts.com/check. So go check out all the delicious options at Nuts.com/check. You'll receive a free gift and free shipping when you spend $29 or more. That's Nuts.com/check.
Nuts.com.
Goodbye.
Bye.
The last half, I just feel like you're watching this movie and you're like, there will be some kind of epic combat or something.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, this movie just completely subverts expectations every time of like, you're not going to know the twist. And then he's like, oh, wait, I think I figured out the twist.
Yeah.
Oh, you reminded me. Yeah, I knew this guy or I saw this guy. And then so you're like, oh, okay, so we figured out the mystery here. I guess now there's just going to be a final showdown. And instead he shows up at this guy's insane loft with water.
Sure.
I just think it's a cool set,
Yeah.
with the.
I do too.
It doesn't look very homey, really, but
and the shell, the things that open and close were filled with clothes,
he has an incredible wardrobe.
Yes.
Also,
Right.
his shower is just kind of in the middle of the place too.
I like
He's
the
always-
vibe.
yeah.
He's
Right.
like, what do you mean? Why does
You're
the
like-
shower
you're like-
need to be in a special room?
Right.
It's
You're
like,
like loft living is the way to go.
He's got
Right.
a tight tush, and then he's got a tattoo of a knife pointing down to his crack.
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
He does.
No, it's a tramp stamp, basically. Yeah.
But as you said, his closet is like 4 pillars.
It's like Darth Vader's
on platforms.
antechamber thing or
Right,
whatever.
he steps in the
Yes.
middle of it. It splits apart.
Kind of unfolds it. Yeah.
And he's basically like, yeah, you figured it out, but what you haven't figured out, obviously, is that I brainwashed you into, having sex with your
Gives
daughter.
him a purple box. Inside is a photo album. It starts with pictures of him and his kid and his wife, and then her getting a little bit older. And you just immediately are like, Jesus fucking Christ. You know it. And I think he does a really good job of playing that he knows it, right? Like the terror with each page he flips as you start to see her look more and more like the woman he met until you get to the photos of them together. And then here's the thing. This performance, which is astounding.
It's a really wonderful performance.
It reminds me a lot of, we talked about William Peterson in Manhunter, where like this is a guy who's just gone.
Right.
From the moment the movie starts, before things even like...
Right, he's already completely ruined.
He's just dead, right? He's
Right.
dead inside. It's a thing I think Jeremy Strong is incredibly good at doing. Succession just ended, so it's top of mind.
Sure.
But there's so many of those scenes where you're just like, he is a man just drained of life. He is so traumatized by what
he's really good
happened.
at the kind of like vacant,
Right.
yeah.
So most of this performance in Oldboy from the time he gets out of imprisonment, I think he has that really well down with spurts of mania on top of it, right? And then this reveal happens and you're like, oh, I thought he was doing poorly before. The degree to which he just completely like collapses behind the eyes after this,
Well, and especially because right before, there's this moment where you're like, you don't need to go to the apartment. Like you could just go, like you guys could just go off like you don't need to finish the story.
He's put it together. He's got his answers.
Yeah, and he is like more alive. I think his hair may even be brushed.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And you're like, oh, you are starting to become a person, like aside from just a revenge monster.
Yes.
Yeah, and then in contrast, then when he just like shatters.
Right. And it's just everything. It's like the 7 stages of grief all in fast motion, right? It's bargaining, it's anger.
There's only 5 stages of grief.
He
You added
adds
a couple
2.
in there. Sure.
He adds
Yeah.
2. Yeah.
You
He
know,
really
the-
takes us on a journey.
Yeah,
Cutting your tongue out
removal.
is the 7th.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he really goes there.
Yeah.
First, he's like, hey, I'm sorry. And, the villain's sort of like, well, kind of was hoping for more than that.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'll be your dog. I'll slobber all over you. I'll do whatever you want. And the guy, he's like, hey, getting there.
Right.
Prefer that. He's like, fine, I'll cut my tongue out.
Because he gets a phone call from her and she's like, hey, they handed me this box. Should I open it?
Yeah.
Which is, that's like another layer down of like, oh, now he just seems, another part of him just died inside the prospect of her finding out.
Yes.
What does he need to do to prevent her from opening the box?
So he cuts
Don't
out his
open
own
the
tongue.
box.
I mean, that's what I did think of that. Like, it's got the same kind of vibe of just like, you really don't want to look in there, but you're probably going to.
I do think I like Brad Pitt and I like the film Seven. But I think of that moment in Seven as kind of like, you're like, Pitt had a ceiling to his skill in the 90s.
It's a
what's in the bug, like where it's sort of on the edge of parody what he's doing.
It's very watchable.
It is. It's very watchable, and the moment is so gripping.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy really sells me on like, I believe it. This guy's like, I gotta lose the tongue.
He has never been so afraid also in his life.
Which, honestly, hard to think of a worse situation to be placed in that moment.
Yeah.
That's
what's
the
going
Greek
through his
tragedy
head.
part of it too, where it's just like, I've imagined a scenario so complex and fucked up.
Yes.
You can't believe it.
Right.
The whole story is just about this scenario.
Yes.
Stuff will happen, but it's really that I thought of something so crazy.
Right.
And the movie will end there. The story ends there.
Yeah. And of course, as opposed to eye stuff, which Oedipus, went
he
for
does,
eyes.
He does not want to.
He goes for
the mouth.
not tooth stuff, but
the
mouth
teeth,
stuff.
the tongue.
Yeah. This is a real mouth stuff movie.
Oedipus, he's crazy, that guy.
He's like, oh no, married my mom, killed my dad. Eyes gotta go.
Bad luck.
I learned about Oedipus too young.
Yeah.
Someone told me like the plot of Oedipus when I was a kid, and I was like, what?
Yeah, what the fuck?
Takes his eyes out?
Yeah.
That really distressed me as a kid. And this movie distressed me as a grown man, which is what I am. Then fucking, Woo Jin kills himself. He plays as we said, pacemaker doesn't work, just turns on
plays the tape, makes him listen
the
to
tape, and Woo Jin then reflects on his sister's suicide in a very extended and kind of distressing flashback of him like holding her.
Right, because there's the thing he remembers about like, wait, she died falling off a bridge by accident.
Right.
Who took the photo?
Right.
And then you see the flashback of him desperately trying to keep her from falling over.
And then he shoots himself.
Well, yes. So he's got his tongue taken out, right?
Yeah.
Which he's doing as an act of sacrifice,
penance, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then it does have this odd effect of just like, well, now I have an insurance policy. I know for a fact I will never tell her that I'm her dad.
Yes.
Right.
It's impossible. It can't be done. You cut to him in the middle of like a snowy forest.
Mm-hmm.
He's with the hypnotist lady.
Yep.
And he's just like, hypnotize me again. And you almost think, oh, is he trying to forget that any of this ever happened? He still wants to know her. At the end of the movie is the two of them together.
Yeah.
Him smiling. He can't speak. What do we think?
That scene is so weird,
It's very
too.
weird.
They're surrounded by mountains.
Yes.
I think they shot that in New Zealand.
Weird.
So they had to like travel somewhere
They
to have
did.
snow and mountains. So it really looks so removed from all
It's
the
a-
other
it's a
contexts.
drastic shift.
Yeah.
Right.
It is very dreamlike.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and just the complexity of him smiling, and then like he sort of goes into this grimace right at the end, and you're like, how much does he remember? Like, what is his state?
Did
at
this
point?
work? Yeah.
I just love that.
Is
grimace.
his intent, I want to forget all of this so I can date her again without feeling conflicted? Or is it, I want to be clean of all of this?
I think date is definitely not the word. No matter what's going to be happening, I wouldn't call it dating. They're not
Okay.
going to like go to the movies a couple times.
Yeah. But it's definitely implied they are going to continue to have a romantic
I
relationship.
think so. They
That's
will be,
my
they
take.
will be
Yes.
bonded.
They're going
Yes.
steady.
Yeah, he does give her his pin at
He
the end of
does.
the movie.
Right. He carries her books.
I mean, he's an old boy, so he's got pins.
That's true.
she's his best gal.
Man.
Yeah, it's been for my school. Funny story about my school. There's this one guy who
You know
had
what?
sex with his
I
sister.
totally forgot about this. Somehow this memory is getting oh no!
I mean, I do love, as much as there's just so much weirdness and like surrounding this, the idea of being like, he makes that list of enemies,
Yeah.
early on where he's like, and he comes up with a whole bunch of people of like all of the people I've wronged.
Right.
But the idea,
And he's clearly a piece of shit. He's
Yeah, he's
clearly
clearly
like,
wronged
has
a
a lot
lot
of
of
people who
people.
wouldn't
Yeah.
like him.
Yeah.
Right.
but I do appreciate the idea of just being like, you just really mess up someone's life without knowing in that like just tiny way you didn't know, and that like the person just hates you so much.
Flashback to how offhand the comment was.
Yeah.
Right.
Where his friend's like, that girl, are you sure? And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Kind of shrugs
He's
it
not like, no, bro, it was definitely that girl. Yeah,
Right.
he is very much like, yeah, sort of saw them kissing or something. Right.
Yeah, there's nothing in it where you'd be like, someone would really need to atone for that.
I
Like,
forgot to mention in the flashback of them fooling around that she takes out her hand mirror and she watches, like, basically she wants to see her own facial expression reacting.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on with her. We only see her very briefly, but we learned she was both very devout and also had some stuff going on
Had some stuff
personally.
going on.
Yeah.
Her scenes are powerful.
Yes.
For sure. I feel like it's just one of these movies that's like sending the audience out in silence, in like stunned silence.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I kind of remember.
It's audacious.
It's very audacious.
And the most audacious thing to do after that twist is to sort of present what is, quote unquote, a happy ending for the characters.
Right. Like they figured it out at
They
least.
get to not be haunted by the terrible thing they're going to continue doing.
Yeah, of course. And she never gets roped in to even have a choice in the matter. Nope.
No,
She's
she is
just
lacking in agency.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone in this movie, I guess, is
lacking
hypnotized and lacking in agency.
Yeah.
And the villain is, just lost in this thing that he will never get over.
He does have a lot of agency.
He's rich and he does stuff.
He's able to make a lot of shit happen.
But he's literally obsessed with one moment.
His life basically was ended in high school. Yeah.
And that's why he kills himself, I assume. He's just kind of like,
done. What
I
else
did
is there for me?
Right.
Okay, so here's my question. Does this movie actually say something that you feel is profound about vengeance?
For me, no, and I think this is maybe why I'm more icked out than sort of affected by it. Whereas I do think, like, not to just go back to it, but like, You're Never Really Here is a movie that I do think gets at something profound in the human condition about the worst things in the world, right?
Yeah.
And trauma and the reason why we deny horrible things happening, because it actually takes more to engage with the worst aspects of humanity than just ignore them. It eats at your soul, right? I don't know what this movie is ultimately saying outside of like, it's a son of a bitch. It'll get you in the end.
I don't know. I mean, like, it's just got a lot of interesting ideas about like, so what he did was wrong. He slept with his sister.
Yeah.
He essentially sort of molests his sister,
right.
the villain.
Something generally frowned upon.
She is
Ujin.
the older one. They make a point of saying,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's unclear
Right.
what
There
the
is-
origins of
there
that
is a
relationship
strange
were.
dynamic to them in general, but he did this, and it's like, there's this like crazy sort of literary, like highfalutin, very Greek tragedy-esque concept of like, can I force my sin onto others?
Sure.
Like, is that the like craziest, most pure vengeance imaginable? Where it's like he kind of is purging himself of what he did by making someone else do it. It's a very interesting concept.
Sure.
It's very interesting to think about. But yes, I do struggle with Oldboy getting past just like the absolute mania of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think also we never get the sense that he feels bad about, in fact, he makes a point of saying that he doesn't. Like they
He
that
certainly
aside
is
from
not repentant about what he
Right,
did.
right. Like, I think
Woo-Jin.
yeah, he is kind of like, we loved each other.
Yeah.
Like the problem was society, that like it was.
But he does know that making someone else do it will not make them happy.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So,
exactly.
No, and also he will not be able to live with himself immediately.
Yes,
Right.
Yes. But he clearly has nothing. That's it. He says like the only thing he was living for is this guy he kept, in a filing cabinet for 15 years.
He is rich and successful.
Right.
It does
and-
feel like, I mean, none of this is like colored in, but my takeaway is he became a billionaire out of spite just to have the resources to fuck with this guy. Right?
Yeah. I mean, they it's mentioned that they come from money in the beginning, but
Sure.
you see
Yeah,
him
they went
even
to a nice school.
yeah, but you see him even. There's like a part where they're walking into his penthouse apartment and the guy who's with him is talking to him about some business matter.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, you're still doing business stuff. And then
got to
meanwhile, when you're
maintain-
embarking in the end game here of your, decade and a half revenge plot. Yeah, I have also trouble. I mean, I think there is something emotionally in this that feels very resonant to me of just kind of like that incoherent and also like ill-advised rage, right? All-consuming kind of blustering rage, like this thing that kind of drives these characters despite any rational, any
Is it
rationality.
Worth it to do the most fantastical form of revenge imaginable?
Right.
You know.
At the expense, but it's so outrageous that I have a lot of trouble connecting to it emotionally in any sense, in any deeper sense.
How do you feel about Greek tragedy? Like, how do you feel about like Medea or? You're like one of those masks that's kind of frowning.
Yeah, not the smiling one.
I don't know. Like, how do I feel? Like, I feel okay about it.
No, but that's not like whenever I watch
I
Greek
give
tragedy,
it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, B+.
Yeah.
No, like whenever I watch, like a restaging of Medea or Oedipus or like I also have that like where I'm walking out where I'm like, oh, it's interesting how they staged that, or what an interesting performance that person gave. But I'm not walking out being like, man, Medea really, obviously you can think, I've studied those a little bit academically. You can think about all of that and all the archetypes that like linger throughout literature and all that. Right. But I'm not walking out exactly being like, I really identified with Oedipus when he was fated to this doom.
Well, yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I think there are things where you're like this kind of apocalyptic grief of like killing your children, in rage. And then also at the same time, like howling your grief about losing them. Like there's something there as like extreme as that is.
So primal.
Right.
Yes.
As extreme as that is, feels still more like understandable to me than saying like a
guy hypnotized me to fuck my daughter.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I was in a hotel.
I married my mother and I killed my father. Out go the eyeballs. Like, I just like, it's just not, there's something there that is just not,
This is clicking something for me though.
Is it eye stuff related?
No. Well, it's like
clicking stuff for me. Just go Sam Neill.
Yeah.
I don't think this movie really has anything to say about like revenge and the human condition in like our real world. I do think this maybe this movie is more in conversation with the way revenge is presented dramatically.
Sure.
I think if anything, this movie isn't commenting on something in us. It is commenting on the way, like, the revenge-o-matic, which is, like, such a fucking sturdy subgenre.
Right. The grandiosity of it.
Right.
Yes.
It's the easiest way to fucking set up a movie is this person did this thing to this other person. The rest of the movie, they got to cut through whoever
it was so bad that you totally get why.
Right. And also they deserve to do whatever they want in this. They are totally justified.
Right. And we, like, as audiences, will accept some pretty perverse things on screen, right? If they kill John Wick's dog, a clearly reprehensible act, then we will watch him murder 1 million people and continue to root for him, right?
100%.
And this movie is sort of cranking all of those elements up to the extreme where it's like the cause of the need for revenge, the form the revenge takes, what he does to get through to the worst guy. Everyone in this, you're just like, none of this is like fun, right? Even though this movie does have some genuinely like thrilling sequences, he's kind of like perverting the revenge thriller to speak to like, if the stripped down version of this were happening in real life, you would find it upsetting. But if you put it on screen, it seems fun. So the only way to make it upsetting on screen is to make it the most upsetting series of things that have ever happened, period. To show you this is all bad.
I think that's a really smart read. And I think like, especially the way the movie, I would say the first like half of the movie is pretty fun to watch if like, and then the second half is like not fun to watch and increasingly unfun. But the way, especially like one, the motivation is so unsatisfying when you actually learn like what happened, but also that then the deflation at the end of like anything resembling satisfaction.
There's no coming back from this. Because even like the revenge thrillers that are a little bit morally conflicted, it feels like the way it's morally conflicted is the end of the movie, the guy finishes his task and he sits down in a chair and then he's like, what next?
Right. Or like, what did I do?
Right.
Who knows? Can I go back?
It all worth
Can I go?
Right.
Well, I mean, even the stuff that's talked about in this movie where he's like, can I go back to a normal life after this? And then by the end of this, you're like, yeah, I don't know that you should.
But this is fundamentally, there's no way to go back. And he instead is like, I'd rather forget what I know to go back.
Yeah.
In a way that's really unfair to her, right? I might have just talked myself into liking this movie 20% more than I previously did.
I think that's a great read. I think that's like a really smart way to engage with it.
Yes. And I also, the thing about engaging or like liking this movie is I really do respect it as a totemic thing.
Absolutely.
As like sort of just like a signpost on the road of cinema.
Yes.
That actually did really change things. I know that was not the intention. It's like Park Chan-wook was like, all right, I'm going to freak these Americans out.
But that's always the case with these movies. The movies that are huge sea changes in any industry, in any culture, in any genre, whatever, are never coming in with the, like, we're going to blow it all up.
No, often it's more like, can I get away with this? Like,
right.
You know, can
I was just trying to do my little weird thing in the corner.
This film was, I just give you a little more context before we play the box office game, a slightly troubled production. It was budgeted at $2.8 million. It ended up costing $5 million. So I think it was like really over budget, over schedule. Like,
supposed to be like 40 some odd days, and it went up to 70 something.
Right.
Yeah. The producer in the documentary said
48 days to 72.
Right.
Yes.
He's like, in my mind, the main two jobs of the producer are to keep the movie on schedule and on budget. So in that sense, I absolutely failed as producer of Oldboy.
Right. I think his producer too, Lim Jung-hyung, was sort of the enforcer and the yeller and all that. I don't know. It seems like it was a very dramatic set.
They did say
there's a lot of fighting.
There was some like roundtable with a bunch of the crew members talking about the Park, and they were like, he's not like a yeller. He's a very intense person.
Sure.
And you are on set all the time kind of terrified of him and like desperate to earn his approval, but he's like never wielding his anger or his judgment around. And then one of the guys goes like, yeah, the worst moment, the moment you're trying to avoid above all else, is him just sighing.
Right.
If you do something or present an element to him, or he calls cut and he just goes,
right.
Everyone's like, Jesus fucking Christ. They're like, he never chews you out. But that
right. But that's enough. That's
right.
enough too. And obviously he seems to just command a lot of respect. So people want to make him happy. The big oneer was initially not going to be a oneer. They switched to a oneer out of laziness. They were like, can we just do this in one shot rather than having to set up a bunch of shots?
Love that. Love that.
And he says, Park says, like, the fatigue we felt making this movie, I feel like is everywhere on screen. Like everyone does feel exhausted.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
It's his first collaboration with Chung Chung-hoon, who is his cinematographer going forward. And what else? They have a very, very close relationship. I mean, and now he's like Hollywood guy who shot like Uncharted.
That's insane.
Wow.
It is really weird. The Green Thing, you mentioned that. And then this film was a huge hit. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance had done badly. Oldboy was a big success. And then, of course, goes to Cannes after experiencing success in Korea, wins the Grand Prix. Lots of rumors that it was the choice for the Palme.
Yes.
And he had submitted Mr. Vengeance to Cannes and gotten rejected. So it was like a real like turnaround for him, I think, in terms of like, you know, whatever.
Is the American theatrical release that fall?
No, it's in 2005.
Wow.
Things really were slow back then.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Tartan, of course, riding high off of certain other, you know, Asian releases like Audition or whatever, the Asia Extreme label. They put it out in Britain and then it makes it to America in 2005. But like, it was not a big hit in America at all. It made like $1 million and like a very divided reviews.
That was probably seen as a success in that moment. What's the most we can get out of a movie like this? Yeah.
But it gets a lot of reviews in America that I feel like he often gets, which is basically like, this is too visceral or too stylish. Right? Don't you feel like that's often what critics, you know, contemporary critics would react to with him?
Well, he was also Mr. Violence, right? Like that was for a long time. Like he was that was a stereotype of like, that's like what his thing was, which is never, I think, how he would describe himself.
Right. But like Manola tore this movie to shreds, saying like too snazzy, you know, essentially. But you know, it did. I think I really do think its tail was very, very long. Like
yeah. Well, especially that the home video, the DVD market. It was like this was like classic of that.
Right. This is a movie that really benefited from like peak DVD. I think that exact like bell curve of like 2004 to 2007 is when suddenly like DVDs were omnipresent. Prices got a lot cheaper. People started having like much bigger collections. Like more casual film fans weren't owning their 3 favorite movies. They were owning like 30 movies they like.
Right.
Because things were suddenly like $8 at Best Buy. And yeah, this is a movie that just exploded there.
Right. So let's do the box office game for March 25th, 2005.
It's wild.
Oldboy opening at number 48.
Basically a full year after Con.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was so fucking hyped up for this because I was like, why aren't they letting me see this goddamn movie?
Well, so wait, you didn't want to see a hilarious family romantic comedy about a young man meeting his fiance's family?
March 2005. Well, I did see this also that same weekend. Guess who?
Guess who?
Mhm.
New in theaters this week. Number one, $20 million.
Yeah. Not good.
Bernie and Ashton.
Yes.
The dynamic duo.
It's a shame they never got to retain.
Have you seen Guess Who?
I have not.
The
Sure.
racially swapped
Yeah.
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner with
course.
more gags and more Ashton Kutcher.
Far more gags.
Something
And
I mean, like,
everyone
I think
wanted
of
at that
Ashton
time.
Kutcher as a Sidney Poitier-esque
Absolutely.
figure.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
and his
that's why
nobility,
he's in
his
that
grace,
role.
his gentle touch.
I also saw Guess Who in theaters. I do not remember it very well, but I don't remember liking it.
I remember being bad. I think I saw every
I was
Bernie
mad that,
Mac
well, I was very pro Bernie
vehicle.
Mac. Me too. I loved Bernie Mac.
one
I
of the
loved the
funniest
Bernie
people
Mac
to
show.
ever live, and an underrated actor. And he never really got the vehicle he deserved.
No, he certainly got vehicles, and he
did.
like worked, and he had movies. Yeah, like
Mr. 3000,
Mr. 3000,
Soul Man,
right.
Even like Head of State, where he's like a pretty strong
He's, like,
second
the
lead.
second lead, yeah.
Yeah.
love Bernie Mac. Guess Who? Directed by Kevin Rodney Sullivan. Don't really. He's
No.
a screenwriter.
Yeah, not ringing a bell.
All right, number two. Somewhat underperforming. A sequel to a major comedy hit.
Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
No.
Underperforming sequel
Female
to a
star.
major comedy hit. Female star. Miss Congeniality 2 Armed and Dangerous.
Armed and Fabulous.
Sorry.
I feel like this is the moment where Sandra Bullock's career seems to be in the toilet.
Yep.
This is also the year that she is in Crash.
Uh-huh.
And when she was in Crash, it kind of felt like, like she has to do something like this, you know,
Right.
like kind of.
So racist she falls down a flight of stairs.
She is so racist that she falls down a flight of stairs.
Is
And then
Lake House the same year?
the Lake House is fucking IMDb
06?
with its fucking like putting the producer credits first.
Get the fuck out of here.
Is 06. So
Okay.
next
Premonition.
year, Premonition is 07. And then in
this is a
09,
bad run.
in 09, she made a certain proposal.
I know.
And she won us all
wins an
back.
Academy Award.
Yep.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Miss Congeniality? 1 or 2?
You know, I don't think I ever saw 2.
One's pretty
One
good.
is pretty
One
good. Yeah,
rock
like I
solid.
feel pretty
Yeah.
positive towards 1. You know, she's always been good at kind of physical comedy.
Yeah.
The whole thing with Sandy Bullock to me is when I was a teen, I did not appreciate her. I
Same.
thought of her as kind of like a B-list star, B-tier star, whatever.
Mhm.
And you rewatch most of those movies now and you were like, this is very, very solid.
Agreed.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
2 weeks notice or whatever. You're just like, this is good.
There's
This
that
is great.
thing after The Heat was such a big hit, and they were like, well, obviously, sequel. And Sandra Bullock is like, I am so burned by
Right.
Speed 2 and Miss Congeniality 2. I will never do a sequel again under any circumstances.
Good for her.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. Go for it, Sandy.
And also, good call. We didn't need the Heat 2. Like,
no, easy.
Heat's
Would have
fun,
been
but,
an
like-
easy paycheck. And she
Sure.
was just like, I'm not fucking doing that again.
all right. Speaking of sequels, number 3 at the
Mhm.
box office, dropping from number 1 the week before.
Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
No, is a horror sequel.
It's a horror sequel.
And weirdly, it's directed by the director of the
The Ring
original
2.
film. It's The Ring 2,
Mhm.
a film that is one of the most incoherent Hollywood films ever released. Like one of those
Never
things where
seen
you're
it.
like, oh my God, like that no one did a pass here or
Never seen
whatever.
But
Yeah.
So weird.
The Ring is like improbably great.
The
Yes.
Verbinski
Like-
Ring is a truly good movie.
Phenomenal.
Yes.
and then
And then when they had Nakata do you were kind of, oh, that's kind of a clever
Interesting.
idea. Bring him in.
Sure.
And I think it's partly that The Ring ends perfectly.
Yes.
Like the story is resolved so well.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of space for a sequel.
The Ring also
But that
has
movie is
like
bananas.
the bonus final act where you think the movie's resolved and they're like, there's another 30 minutes to go, which
Yeah.
kind of functions like its own sequel. Where then how do you tack a sequel onto that?
I
Ring
also
rules.
feel like, you know, The Ring, there's a lot of stuff in the Japanese Ring, which is a great movie, obviously, but that they kind of discarded certain elements of like psychic powers and all of that in the
They
Americanization.
refined it a
And I
little.
think, I think those could have stayed.
Right. Ring 2 is like Sissy SpaceX here. She's got a bird's nest on her head and she's crazy. You know, like it's a lot of like whatever. And that movie it did okay, but it did not
Huge drop
do
off from the first.
right, the business of the first. Okay, number 4, animated film, terrible.
Ah, fuck. Home on the Range?
No.
No, that's 2004. It's not Meet the Robinsons. That's
No.
2007.
Not
Is
a
it a
Disney,
Disney? It's
no.
not a Disney. Is it a DreamWorks?
Yes. Oh no, actually no, it's a fox.
It's a fox. It's a fox, and it's not an Ice Age.
Not an Ice Age. No, it's a one-off.
It's a one-off, and it's a robots.
Robots.
I rewatched Robots recently.
Why?
I don't remember why.
Why did you do that?
I don't remember
How was
what
it?
prompted me. It's bad. What's interesting is
It's kind of the last Robin Williams doing a voice in a cartoon as well.
The design in that movie is unbelievable.
Okay.
It looks incredible. It's all William Joyce.
Right.
It's written by David Lindsay-Abaire.
Sure.
It has this crazy stacked cast. It is one of the only animated films, certainly of that size, I've seen where I'm like, I think they fucked with this in the edit, where you can tell like entire plot lines were lifted out. They put pop songs over it that sequences were not designed around.
Right.
It feels similarly kind of incoherent. Character design's great in it.
Haven't seen Robots. Ben, have you seen Robots?
No.
Number 5 at the box office. Comedy with a big star who endures to this day.
Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed.
No!
He's the biggest comedy star in Hollywood. Old Scoobert.
That movie came out in 2004.
Fuck.
That's actually a check. Really? No, this film is sort of a forgotten thing. It is a family-friendly vehicle for an action star that was a hit. It is The Pacifier. Yeah. People forget that The Pacifier made money.
Was a big titty tip.
It was a big old hit for Vin Diesel, and yet it was kind of like,
it was embarrassing.
You lost the juice, huh,
This
buddy?
was when he went crawling back to the Fast and Furious, not that long after this.
Exactly.
It's a real, this is 4 years before he goes crawling back.
Yeah, well, what happens? There's something in between.
He does Babylon AD.
Okay.
Which is the real nadir.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's one other thing in this era I'm forgetting.
He doesn't work much.
Yeah, he doesn't. I remember,
because obviously Riddick is the year before.
Find Me
Chronicles of
Guilty,
Riddick, right?
5 or 6.
Oh, maybe.
6.
Yeah, that's in there.
Yeah, okay. So it's Find Me Guilty, and then Babylon's the one where he's done.
Babylon AD is 2008, and that's one of those movies that I think sat on the shelf for a while or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, he really just didn't work much.
And
Riddick
6,
really kind of blew it up for him.
Right. 6 is the Tokyo Drift cameo. Oh, absolutely. I appreciated, Fast X is a disaster, but I appreciated your defense of his commitment in your review, which I do think is important.
Oh, yeah. He's acting so hard.
He's acting harder than anyone.
He is. That's true. He's not phoning it in that movie.
No.
Some things were phoned in that movie.
Absolutely. Almost everything.
On a fucking tin can phone.
Right.
I mentioned this in the review, but the like part early on where he's like at home looking out the window and he hears us out and he like whips his head around so much that people laughed in the audience. And I was like, yeah.
He's undeniably got a lot of power on screen and he commits very hard to everything he does. The Pacifier, though, is a weird example of what you're saying, like a hit that hurt someone's career.
A hit where it's like, this is a big bummer.
It makes $130 million or whatever, sold entirely on his name. It is popular and everyone's like, okay, we're done with you.
Number 6 is Hitch. Huge hit, obviously.
Man.
Number 7, the Bruce Willis thriller Hostage, which I definitely saw in theaters. And I remember, I think my dad asked me, like, hey, was that any good? And I was like, the opening credits are kind of cool. And he was like, that's a bad sign. Like, that you think that it was the best thing to remember.
I think that came up in a box office game semi-recently, and your hint was, it's a movie where the title is just a thing. And I guessed it in 1. Because it's the most fucking first draft title ever.
Hostage.
Yeah. Sounds like a Jason Bateman comedy.
Yeah, right. I'm a hostage.
He's doing the Jason Bateman poster face.
You've also got Ice Princess. Is that Michelle Trachtenberg?
Ice skating drama.
With Disney film.
Kim
She falls in love with the boy who drives the Zamboni.
Sure.
Be Cool.
Yeah, we'll cover it someday, probably on the fucking Elmore Leonard.
Elmore Leonard, sure.
Yeah, that came close.
And number 10 at the box office has just won the Academy Award for Best Picture, $1 Million Baby.
What's it up to at this point?
94, and it's going to make 100. So it's basically done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Alison, anything you want to plug?
No.
Oh, your writing's great. Everyone should read everything you write.
Yeah, you can follow my dog on Instagram.
Follow the dog on Instagram.
Yeah, Samo the dog.
Everything you're writing over on New York Magazine and Vulture. Your Fast X review I thought was particularly good.
I appreciate you saying that.
And I said this to you backstage when we were at the film spotting show. But your Top Gun piece. Is this all a death dream? A take that is usually exhausting, but
that fired up Bill Simmons. We talked about it.
The amount of people I know who are not caught up in the fucking film Twitter world who cited that. Did you read that fucking piece?
It is ironclad. The logic of that
Yes.
theory, whatever I hate to use the word theory these days because it's become so loaded. But the logic of that argument is.
But I feel like it crossed barriers.
Yes.
It's honestly like
Sound
the best
barriers.
thing I wrote last year. I think easily.
Incredible piece. I highly recommend it
Thank
anyway.
you.
What a
It's
good movie.
Yeah.
That movie.
Yeah.
Talk about rock solid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of the Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed of our time. Alison, far too long since we'd had you on before. We'll have you on again sooner.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thanks for coming, Allison. Talking about Oldboy with us on Blank Check. I don't know why I'm doing this.
The oldest of the boys. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media and helping to produce the show. Thank you to AJ McKee and Alex Barron for our editing, JJ Birch for our research, Lane Montgomery and the Great American Novel for our theme song, Pat Reynolds, Joe Bowen for our artwork. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features, where we do commentaries on film series and other sorts of bonus stuff. So we're doing the Oceans franchise, including the Rat Pack and the 8 with the 3 Soderberghs in between. And we'll be doing an episode on Little Drummer Girl, putting TV on the Patreon side where it belongs.
Gotta start watching that.
Free membership on the Patreon, old episodes unlocked from 3 years ago every 10 days. What's coming up there, Ben?
We have Hanging Up with Sonia.
Our Efron series. Great. Tune in next week for Sympathy for Lady Veterans.
That's right. Yep.
And as always, never, ever, ever open a box.